And we ended up going to 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines. I was on weapons company. And this kid comes over, Rodriguez. He's like, where are you from? And I was like, I'm from Chicago. So I live on 31st and so. He's like, bro, you need to come to my room. So I end up going to his room. He's like, you got to meet so-and-so. He's from Chicago too. I walk in and I see this kid who was an opposition gang and I nearly killed. So I'm like, what's up, bro? And he's like, what's up, man? I was like, you ain't got to talk about the past, do we? During Operation Phantom Fury, there was a canal and there's a canal banks. The lead vehicle had seen some activity in the bank where the bushes were. They jump out and these guys are strapped, chest rigged, weapons, and then it just starts happening. We get out and just start shooting. I remember seeing a guy in the bushes and he pops up. He's got an RPG. And in slow motion, I see that thing go and it hits my lead vehicle. You're seeing muzzle flashes, guys popping up, ding, 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 ding. So now we're just throwing hand grenades. We had a guy get shot in the face, hits him in the back of the jaw, breaks his jaw, starts coming out of front of his mouth, breaks his teeth, and he spits the bullet out. Well, we had begun to take fire. Green runs around the front of the vehicle to kind of get on this side of the vehicle because we're taking it from the right side. And the second that he comes over here, he steps on mine. Boom. I go up against the side of the vehicle and you don't hear anything. The dust cloud begins to kind of settle and I see Stacy Green's body just laying there. His mouth was wide open, his eyes were open. The captain that was in the vehicle with us is like, hey, what are you gonna do? So I said, I gotta go get him, sir. Marcos Estrada, born and raised on the south side of Chicago. Got to throw that in there. Served in the U.S. Marine Corps as an infantryman from 1992 to 2012, and I got out as a master sergeant. Born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I was a statistic, like most. I'm of Mexican descent. Was raised by a single mother with 2 other brothers. So I'm the middle. I've got an older brother who was 4 years older than me, and then a younger brother who's 13 months younger than me. Grew up on the south side of Chicago in a rough part of the area, rough part of the city. Fighting all the time. That's what we did. And it built character. It made me who I am today, and I certainly appreciate it. It wasn't always easy, but it certainly left lasting memories. So in the south side of the city, particularly in a neighborhood that I grew up in, it was called Little Village, La Villita. And it still is to this day. I mean, I was there in the late 70s, rather, right? So to this day, it's heavily populated with primarily Mexican-American immigrants that have come over. So there's a lot of controversy with some of the things that are happening now in that neighborhood. And it was the same then. My family migrated over from Mexico when they were younger. And growing up in that kind of community, I didn't really even experience a whole lot of other cultures. So everything that we did there, stores, any kind of shopping, groceries, laundry, everything was within that community. So going to school in this small community, this bubble essentially, that was riddled with crime and gangs, that's what you grew up into. It was an organic, natural progression. As you began to get old enough and trusted, you became one of the faction that was there in the neighborhood. Just because of the toxicity within my family, my parents were going through a terrible separation and ultimately divorce. We got out of the neighborhood and moved around quite a bit, but those roots stood with me. So my brothers and I eventually succumbed to that lifestyle later in life, but it was planted on us early. And it didn't help that my father and my father's father came from a very similar upbringing. So we just naturally went that course of lifestyle. Within that neighborhood where we were actually at, it was a pretty predominant gang that's actually national called Latin Kings. I didn't become a Latin King, but we certainly knew a lot of them within the neighborhood, grew up with them, and seen some of the things that evolved as a result of it. By the time I got out of the neighborhood, we moved away. My parents were going through an extremely terrible divorce. And my father was in and out of prison through most of my life. So didn't really get to see him a whole lot. He came back into my life when I was about 13. So he went away. When I was 7 years old, he ran my mother over with a car. He was a heroin addict. He was strung out, and I was actually sick one morning, and I didn't go to school. And my mom had contacted him and said, hey, look, I want to bring him over to your parents' house, right? So I was going to go to grandma and grandpa's house while I was sick. My mom had to go to work, so she had to take me, drop me off, and my father didn't want to stay there with me. So they had an altercation, and a lot of this stuff as a kid is completely transparent to you, right? So this is secondhand, thirdhand, later in life, hearing about the conversations that had been taking place that I was unaware of. So essentially what happened was they had an argument. He didn't want to like watch me because they weren't together at the time. So my mother expected that he watched me while I was sick. He had things that he wanted to do, obviously. So she takes me to my grandparents' house. They have an altercation outside. He's kind of strung out. They have issues. And then the fight ensues. He ends up attempting to leave. And my mother gets hung up under the vehicle, breaks both of her legs. So at the age of 7, my mom is now hospitalized and stuck in a bed for the next couple of years. She had casts that were from her thighs down to her toes, and everything that came out of that woman went into a bedpan, and I cleaned up. So I was 7 years old. My little brother was 6. My older brother was 11. So here we are in the neighborhood. We live on a 3rd floor apartment building in Chicago, and we had to do everything, man. Cook, clean, grocery shop, and we were broke, man. My old man's now in prison, and we got nothing. Right. So it was tough. It was tough growing up that way. We had to grow up fast and with not a whole lot, like it's probably a lot of calendar flips ago, but in my heart mind, I remember like doing laundry in my bathwater, man, because we were so broke. But what happened was, because those are the most formidable years of my life, you begin to kind of like that lifestyle. Right? You, as a child, you only tend to like what you know and what you see and what attracts you, right? Because you don't know anything beyond that circle. So my brothers and I grew up developing this affinity for that lifestyle of fast pace and violence, right? Because that's what we saw. So we had it began to create this appetite. The problem was, when my father would come home and he'd have these violent episodes, we would take off running to our bedroom, put the furniture in front of the door so that he wouldn't come in, because he'd be beating on my mom, and we didn't want that to happen to us. And we felt obviously scared that it was going to. So whenever he would come home and they'd get into it and start having an altercation, we would E&E, right? We would egress and evade to our bedroom. And sometimes if we could, we would get to the back door and take off running. We lived in a 3rd floor apartment. We'd run down the back porch and run to the neighbor's house. And the neighbors, the Gonzalez family, they had like 5 boys and 3 girls, a humongous family. And particularly by these days standards, right? 8 kids is you don't see that very often. So we would run next door, bang on the door. They'd open the door. They knew what it was, man. They knew what time it was and what was happening. So they would pull us in, close the door, and then my mom would come over lumped up later and pick us up, But that house was always associated with safety, security, and love, because what it stood for as us, right? It was a place that we could evade to and be safe. And we felt safe there. And one of the brothers, Albert, joined the Marines. And I remember seeing Albert, right? Because we had this respect and love for them. They could have done no wrong because of what they stood for to us. So Albert had joined the Marines. And at the time I'm 7, right? So in fact, even younger, because this is before the accident had happened. So I'm 5, 6 years old. So Albert was of age to join the Marines. He was probably late teens, early 20s. And to me, he was massive, right? He was like jacked. He had like a broken nose and high and tight flat top. And I remember seeing him in his uniform one day, and I was like, man, I don't know what that dude is, but when I grow up, I'm going to be just like him. And I later found out that Albert was a Marine. And one of the times I had come out of our apartment building, our apartment building was kind of recessed back, right? It was like recessed back. We had a big front yard, and all the other buildings and houses were flush with the sidewalk. So we had a big front yard. So I was coming out of my front yard and running across, because I saw a line. I could see in the distance on the sidewalk, there were a bunch of, all the boys from the neighborhood were lined up on the sidewalk, and they were lined up trying to get onto the stoop of my neighbor's house. So I come outside. I'm like, hey, what's going on, right? Because that's what we do. You outside, you're a kid, you go outside and play. So I'm like, what are the boys up to? So I go outside, see all the kids lined up on a sidewalk. So I run up, I'm like, hey, what's going on? They're like, hey, Albert's home on leave. Like, oh, is he? So I turn the corner and I see that he's sitting on the stoop right in front of their house. And he's got one of the boys laid across his lap like this. I'm like, what the heck's going on? I said, man, he's doing this thing. We're all in line to see if we can beat it. So I'm like, oh, what are you doing? So he's got one of the boys across his lap and he's got a washcloth over his mouth and he's got a pitcher of water. And he's pouring water in the kid's mouth. So of course I'm like, looking, we're all like, we all watch while it's happening. And he's like, oh, no. All right. So the kid starts drowning, right? He's having difficulty because he's drinking water until he can't anymore. And then he attempts to suck in air and it goes into your lungs. And we all now know this to be waterboarding. So all these kids, like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, we're all like, what the heck, kid? I want to do it. I want to do it next. So we're all watching and I decide like, I want to get my chance. I want my opportunity to do it. So I get my chance. So I'm like, hey, what's up, Albert? Welcome home. And by the way, I'm going to beat this, right? So I lay back. He takes a washcloth, puts it over my mouth. And sure enough, I remember like it was in slow motion. I could remember this day. It was 40 plus years ago. I could remember this. He like takes this pitcher of water and he starts pouring it. And I'm looking and I see the water coming in and I'm like, oh, I'm like pacing myself. Oh. And then I can't anymore. And I inhale and I start coughing, right? So I'm like, ugh. So he's pouring. I panic. I jump up and I'm like, Albert, where did you learn that? And he was like, in the Marines. I was right then and there. I said, man, I want to be a Marine. Like, why can't they put that on commercials, right? Like,
this dude is waterboarding all the kids.
He's waterboarding all the kids in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Wow.
That's the best recruitment tool ever.
Yeah. Wow.
So I actually got to see Albert probably 33 years later, man. I saw him. So here I was probably 5, 6 years old. He came home on leave, waterboards everybody in the neighborhood, right? Goes away. I was inspired and motivated as a result of this event to want to be a Marine. So my life takes its toll. I start having problems, get into trouble, all of those things, right? So I still kind of doing life, join the Marines, take off, do a 20-year career, multiple combat deployments. Now I'm home. I did like most meathead knuckle dragging monkeys. And as soon as I retired from the Marine Corps, I went for Blackwater. Right. So at the time, they'd already changed their name to Academy, but that's who I worked for. And the guys that were on my detail were all original BW, Bear Paw, Blackwater guys. So I let my hair grow out a bit. I got a little bit of a beard going. I got my hair slicked back. I'm wearing a bandana because I'm actually working on my house. So I pull up in a corner. I got like ripped up jeans on. I paint and drywall all over because I was working on my house. And I jump out just like I had done 100 times over. And down the block, I see this dude walking towards me with 2 little boys and a puppy. And he happens to be wearing a Marine Corps t-shirt. So I look at the guy and I'm like, man, my mind's buffering, right? Like, where did I see this guy before? And it clicked. It was Albert Gonzalez. Bro, this is 33 years later. And he looked exactly the same. Yeah. So I looked at him and I was like, hey, is your name Albert? And he was like, yeah. I said, Albert Gonzalez. Yeah. How do you know? Do you know me? And I was like, you were in the Marines. He was like, yeah, it was a long time ago, man. Many moons ago. It's like, you used to live on 24th and Sawyer. He's like, do I know you, man? How do you know all this stuff about me? I said, bro, do you remember when you were a kid, there used to be a family next door that the dad used to come home and lump the mom up, and we would take off running and run to your guy's house and bang at the door, and your mom would take us in. He was like, yeah. I said, bro, I was one of those little boys, man, you know? And I never got to tell you, but I joined the Marines because of you. And he was like, bro, are you serious? Like, man, we just started hugging like schoolgirls, man, and crying, like. So it's like, how's your mom doing? You know, and we're asking each other the same thing. How's your mom? How's your dad? You know, how's your brothers and your sisters? And by then I had lost my brother to that lifestyle. You know, his parents, he had lost, their dad had passed away. The mom was like on their deathbed. And what's funny is like when I retired, I hadn't gotten my retirement ceremony, and I had told my CEO I didn't want a retirement ceremony at my last duty station. I was going to have it in Chicago. So, and it was like in 2 weeks from when I had seen Albert. I said, Albert, you got to come to my retirement ceremony, man. You have to. Like, it's because of you that I did this. He said, man, I wouldn't miss it for the world, man. So he came to my retirement ceremony.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So my mom eventually recovered. She was told she was never going to walk again, man. And she did. It took several years of recovery and physical therapy, and she eventually walked. She eventually met a man who she had known in her past life, and they kind of reunited, and he became my stepdad. So my mom was having this long distance relationship, who's now my stepdad, in Indiana. And Indiana to Chicago it's like a suburb, and it's like literally an hour away. So she was having this long distance relationship with who eventually became my stepdad. And so she would take off after work, like Friday night, she would take off for the weekends, and she wouldn't come home till either Monday morning before work. She'd come home and change or whatever. She would be gone for the weekend. And then she would go to work on Monday, or she would just go straight to work from there and then come home like Monday night after work. So she left 3 teenage boys at home to just do the devil's work. And that's exactly what we did. So I was about 15 years old. And the neighborhood that we lived in by this time, we had kind of started bringing some trouble to it. So there was already some crime, but we kind of contributed our portion. And a rival opposition organization, they knew that we lived there. So they would come and occasionally it would send people to the neighborhood. So I was actually in the alley. So in Chicago, we have these alleys, right, that run where all the trash is at. But we use them as a means of transportation as well, right? Because they run parallel to the streets. So I was actually walking through the alley, and I had seen some guys. They noticed me from an opposition organization, and they started kind of chasing me down. They saw me, they started representing, we started, hooting and hollering. So the vehicle stopped, comes down the alley, and they started shooting at me. So they missed that particular night, and I managed to get away. Well, I had actually happened to have a place full of dudes. We had a bunch of guys over, and we were all hanging out in my apartment. And when they took off, I run upstairs and let them know what had happened. So I basically said, hey, fellas, I just got shot at. It was so-and-so, these guys. They tried to take me out, and we need to do something about it. So, of course, we get a quick plan devised, and my mom had left her vehicle. So we jumped in her car, drive to the neighborhood to retaliate. And as we actually get there, as we're driving through the neighborhood, they probably expected it. They knew we were there. They knew we were coming. And it was no different than like Somalia or Iraq or Afghanistan, because these guys came from everywhere. There was whistling. There was different notifications to people within a neighborhood that the enemy had arrived. So as we kind of showed up, my brother was driving, my older brother was driving, and we had seen these guys. So I stuck my head out the window and started shooting at these guys. Pow, pow, pow. Well, I didn't realize at the time what tap, rack, bang was, right? In the Marine Corps, you're taught immediate action. I didn't know that. So I catch it. I have some kind of a malfunction or a stoppage. I get in the vehicle and I attempt to clear it. And at that time, a guy jumps out in the middle of the street, and my brother, he slings a baseball bat at the windshield. So my brother's like, hold on. So he tries to run the guy over, and the guy, gets out of the way, takes off in between a couple of different cars. But because the windshield hit spiderweb so badly, he couldn't really see. So I hear ping, 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 and the vehicle's just getting peppered, man. They're shooting the car up. I remember getting down, and the back windshield goes out because they had shot it. My brother's like, hold on. So he tries to run another guy over that gets in the middle of the street, tries to run him over, and he misses, but he hits a curb, ends up losing control, smacks the car into a garage. So now it's like, boom. And it's literally like Black Hawk Down at this point, because they're coming for us. So I just remember my brother saying, get out and just run. So we run, we jump out of the vehicle. And as soon as I open that door, man, I feel heat in my back. And we were wrestlers. Me and my little brother had been wrestling. We were in high school and wrestled. So we were in pretty decent shape for gangsters, right? Because gangbangers ain't in shape. So I remember getting out, and me and my brother pour out of the same side. We pour out of the passenger side back seat. And I felt that heat going to my back, but my adrenaline was just pumping so much, man. I didn't really feel the pain. So we get out, and I remember guys are throwing bottles, and I just hear gunshots, and it's like, get him, get him, get him. You just hear all this stuff, right? So I take off, and I remember running right down the middle of the street, and I'm just breathing, man. And I'm back at wrestling practice at this point, and I'm like breathing in my nose, out my mouth, like, you know, and I'm hustling. And because of everything that's going on, man, there's auditory exclusion, and you know, you don't really hear much. Everything sounds muffled, and I hear footsteps is all I really hear. But I'm just like booking, and I'm running, and I see a major street, and I'm just thinking I'm gonna run to that street, and all I need to do is just get away. So me and a buddy of mine who was with me, he managed to kind of keep up, and my brother split off. My little brother split off somewhere, and I'm taking off. I just know that the footsteps are getting further and further away. And I run across the street, jump in 1 yard, jump a fence. And now I'm like, all right, we're good. I'm gone. So in Chicago, we also have what's called gangways, right? So the buildings are side by side, and there's a sidewalk that separates the two structures. So I remember running through a gangway to get to the backyard, and I'm really just losing it, man. I'm exhausted, and I know it's because I just had this big adrenaline dump, but I felt heavy, and I felt like my legs were just like anchors. It's like I was more tired than I ever been before, and I really was like, hey, I got to take a knee. And my buddy at this point had kind of caught up to me, and he's like, let's go. He's trying to grab me and kind of get me into the backyard so we can kind of hunker down and hide, because these guys at this point are like swarming all the, you know, the different gangways and trying to find us. So I remember him kind of dragging me, and I was like, man, I can't go. I couldn't move. I was just struggling. And he drags me into the backyard. And the way a lot of Chicago architecture works is there's a gangway, and then there's like stairs that go into the basement. So we're in the basement stairs, and he's got me draped across his lap, and he's like smacking in my face, trying to keep me awake. And I remember he's like crying, you know, like, man, don't die on me. So I'm like, why would you think I'm going to die, man? And I later come to find out that I had been stabbed, and I had a sliver of glass. It was a broken bottle that had been stuck in my back, and it came out. So I was leaking pretty good, and I'm leaking across his lap. So he thinks that I'm going to die because he don't know the severity of my wound. So he's like smacking me and not to die. And the owner of the house, she comes out. So like we're by the basement stairs, there's a porch that goes up. This woman comes out. She's like, hey, what are you guys doing? And he explains to her, like, my buddy's been stabbed. He's gonna die. So she comes running down, and she's like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I can hear this, but I really can't just do a whole lot of moving. So he kind of talks through the situation. He kind of tells her what happened. And so she's like, well, I'm gonna call the police. He's like, no, you can't call the police, right? Like now we've got like, not only do we have a crime scene, but we have like a down vehicle. This is literally like Black Hawk Down, man. Like a down vehicle. I don't know where my other guys are. There was 5 of us in the vehicle. There's a pistol that's probably got some bodies on it, right? Like I don't know. I don't even know where I got the gun, right? Like I just know that I had a gun at some point. It's probably in the vehicle being recovered by the opposite gang. So there's like all of these things. Serialized gear missing, right? Like so, and now we got a casualty that's got to get out of the combat zone, but there's no medevac to be called. So the woman's like, well, I'm going to call the police. And he's like, no, you're not going to call the police. Like, you can't. Like, we can't be known to the police. So she goes and gets me a washcloth, like a warm cloth. She cleans me up. They take a look at my wound. And like, hey, I got to get home, right? So keep in mind, I'm 15 years old. We go back to my place. What she ends up doing is just basically cleaning me up, taking me home, to where there's no parents, by the way, right? I don't know where my brothers are. And there's just an apartment with a handful of dudes that were just, you know, they were basically, you didn't have cell phones. So they were just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen when we came back from our mission, Retaliation. Come back, report just to find me all jacked up. Well, my girlfriend at the time, she goes down to the corner store, the grocery store, the local grocery store, and steals a bunch of first aid equipment, comes back and patches me up with like butterfly stitch Band-Aids. I never went to the doctor, never got any kind of tetanus shots, any kind of stitches. Like, so I just got a gnarly gash on my back from this event when I was 15 years old. So I was 18 when I joined the Marines. Between my junior and senior year, I walked into the recruiter's office. I was 16. Wesley Sanders, Staff Sergeant Wesley Sanders. And it's funny because my mom, in Chicago, there's a place called Rickabenny's, and they're known for their steak sandwiches. It's a breaded steak sandwich. They have the best breaded steak sandwiches around. Fries, good, crispy Coke. It's a great spot. So they had opened a Rickabenny's that was new, and it had like this kind of like 50s theme. So I remember we were going to Rickabenny's, and out of the corner of my eye, I see this recruiting office in the same plaza. It's like a plaza. And we're walking to Rickabenny's, and I see it, and I was like, "Hey, Mom, I'll meet you inside. I saw this girl that I knew from school, or somebody's gonna go say what's up." And she's like, "All right, hey, what do you want?" So she like takes my order. You know, typical is she didn't suspect anything. So she goes into Rickabenny's. I go over to the recruiting office. So I kind of like shuffle over. I wait for her to get to the restaurant, and I shuffle over to the recruiting office. So I walk in. I'm sure I probably look pretty panicky. The staff sergeant's just kind of sitting, you know, at his desk with his feet up. And I said, "Hey, what's going on, man? You guys got like any information, any pamphlets or something?" And he's like, "Wow, what's going on?" I said, "Nothing. I just need something real quick, man. And then I got to take off." He's like, "Why are you in such a hurry?" I'll never forget. He was just like, "Why are you in such a hurry?" I was like, "Look, man, my mom's coming. All right, I just want some information. I got to get out of here." He's like, "Well, what's your name, kid?" And so I said, "My name's Marcos Estrada." He's like, "Well, how old are you?" I'm 16. He's like, "Okay, well, just come back when you're 17. So we're having this conversation. I'm trying to get as much information as I can in a short time. Well, apparently my mom saw where I came. So she comes in, she rips the door open, and she starts laying into me. Like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I was just getting some information, Mom." And she's like, "You're not taking my baby anywhere." She's like, tells the recruiter. He's like, "Man, I'm just sitting here. We're not taking your son anywhere. We're not taking your baby. Don't worry about it." So I was like, let me get your business card. So I take the business card. Now keep in mind, this is probably 1990. I still have my recruiter's business card. Yeah. So I take the card. And again, man, all of these little chains of events of things happening date back to when Albert waterboarded me at 5 years old, 6 years old, right? Like, but I still want this. I still want this. Even after all these other things that I had been involved in, problems and moving and all of these things, man, being a Marine stuck in the back of my head for the entire time. So I left. I came back when I was 17. About 2 months later, after I turned 17, I walked back into the office and told him, I said, "Hey, man, you told me to come back when I'm 17. I'm 17 now. I'm ready to do this." So as a recruiter in a big urban environment, they have this card that they have you read just to see how far, like how many words you can read. It's like it's kind of insulting when you look at it. It's like cat, dog, milk, tree, and you start, and as you go further along, the words become more and more difficult. But he had me take this test, and he's like, "Okay, you did all right, man. Okay, pretty good. We're gonna have you take this pre-test." So I'm like, "All right." So I took a pre-test, did well. And he said, "Okay, look, here's the deal, man. I think that you're going to be able to pass the test with no issues. You'll be fine. We'll have to schedule you for this. You know what your mom think?" I said, "She's not all right with it, but she's going to have to be okay with it." And she eventually became okay with it. She eventually became okay with the idea of me doing it. And so we had to go all this paperwork, and she had to get divorce papers and all this stuff and sign a parental consent. But I enlisted in July of 1991. It was between my junior and senior year. And when I enlisted, they gave me a ship date of June of 1992. So I was in a delayed entry program for an entire year. And then so once I graduated, I had a ship date a week after graduation. So it was like gone. And even that was a bit of a challenge because I almost didn't graduate.
Well, in the recruiter station, did you get to pick your job?
I did. Well, here's the thing is because of my waivers that I had, again, this is stuff that I learned later. And I don't know why, I don't know. He may have explained to me, but I just didn't comprehend at the time, I guess. But I ended up coming in open contract. And I ended up cutting a 79 on the ASVAB. So I did well, but I had multiple CG level waivers because of my drug usage and my felonies. So I'd been arrested for attempted manslaughter at 15. That was lowered. I had an attorney, my own attorney, and he got the case lowered to AGBAT. So I ended up getting arrested for aggravated battery, which was the final formal charge. But then I went to court for 13 months, was placed on trial, and beat the case. About a month later, I was arrested for strong arm robbery and was not convicted. In fact, I never even went to court. They dropped charges before I was completely processed, and I walked away from that. But I was arrested for 2 felonies. So never convicted. And that's why it did not preclude me from joining the Marines, because I was never convicted. So I had some other charges too. They were all small stuff. But because of the arrest record and because of drug usage, I had CG level waivers, man. So they didn't allow me to pick my job. Boot camp was a pretty interesting experience for me. I was in decent shape. I was a wrestler. I'd been in the delayed entry program for a year, right? So, and because this was one of the things that I had felt inherently excited about, I really kind of put as much as I could into it. I wasn't one of those kids in the delayed entry program was always like, always, oh man, I'm going to be a Marine and I'm going to change my life now. I knew that I was going to do something different. And what little time I gave it my all when I was there. I attended pool functions. I was a good poolie. I would check in. I did all the stuff I was supposed to do, but I was still living this kind of double life. So I was pretty prepared in terms of physical fitness. I was doing 17 pull-ups before I went to recruit training. I was still running pretty good. I'll never forget. I mean, I ran a 10-10 mile and a half, which was pretty decent. So I ran 10 mile and a half. I was doing 17 pull-ups before I even went to recruit training. I was doing, I don't know how many sit-ups. I was doing well. But what I wasn't fully prepared for was kind of the emotional thing, because I had emotional ties to home. I had this innate kind of desire to be part of what I was already a part of, running with a mob, hanging with my friends. And I had, at this point now, I discovered I had a pregnant girlfriend. So what little I did know about connection and stability and love, I left it all, right? I wasn't necessarily fully prepared for that. So that kind of played with my mind a bit, but I knew that I had to make it. And the physicality, because of the physicality, the drill instructors pay attention, right? Because I tried hard, I was in decent shape, and I was a wrestler, man. So I was a hard-nosed kid, particularly because of my upbringing too, right? I was a gangster, man. So I was taught, I was a hard-nosed kid, in shape, and in the Marine Corps, man, that's what they look for, right? And that's what makes you successful, right? If you have grit and you're in shape, man, you're gonna make it. And so the drill instructors, I felt, had kind of developed an affinity for it because of that. I was the first kid in my platoon to get a 300 PFT. I started getting little responsibilities. I was the 2111, which is like the recruit who goes and unlocks all the rifles when we're doing drill. They made me the house mouse. So I cleaned the duty hut. So there was just a bit more of trust that I saw that the drill instructors had. And even though I was a punk kid from the city, from the neighborhood, I still understood how to read humans, right? And I recognized that there was this kind of affinity and trust that they had with me and for me. So they confided in me, Estrada, come here, I need you to do this. Yeah, you go do this. And then I became a hitman for them when we were doing boxing, right? So because I could throw some hands, when it came time for boxing, it was like, hey, Estrada, come here. Hey, you're going to fight so-and-so. And then all the recruits that they didn't like, they put me on to put a whooping on them. So I started really recognizing this, man. And it really, it helped me grow faster. It helped me make recruit training a bit better of an experience because they gave me responsibility. They gave me trust and confidence. And those things are the things that I really felt like as a broken kid, man, I needed, and I really needed in order to be able to make it through. And a big shout out to them, man. I appreciated that. So boot camp, I mean, it was tough, man. It was tough. But I had my own challenges. I think that maybe some don't. And maybe I had things that were easier where other people found to be a bit more of a challenge for them as well. We had a drill instructor who, Jimmy Cortez, he was an infantry guy. And I had really he was one of the ones that I really I guess, connected with in terms of like, he didn't know that we were, but like to me, it was like, he was kind of like what would be like my favorite drill instructor. And there were a couple of times where he took his cover off, which is obviously like it's a sign of endearment, right? Like they're looking at you differently than just the recruit. And he took his cover off and he put his finger in my chest and just basically gave me a bit of an encouragement. Like, hey, Estrada, you're going to be all right, kid. And like that in itself was like enough, man. That boosted my ego. It filled my little tank that I needed to be filled, man. Like, it gave me a vote of confidence that like he saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. And even though it wasn't super spectacular, this big event, that moment, that little connection that we had was enough for me. And those that spent time on the drill field, they know the power that they have to be able to speak into people. And I think that he used that moment to be able to do that because he knew, man, he knew I was a broken kid. They see kids day in and day out and they know who's going to make it. They probably know who they don't want to make it. And they know those that are going to struggle. And I think that he was able to read me well enough to be able to say, hey, look, if I give this kid just his vote of confidence, just what he needs to make it. So up to this point, in the first phase, obviously, like in the Marine Corps in the early 90s, they had phases. It was the first phase, second phase, third phase. And I'm sure they had continued to kind of categorize them that way. But the way it was structured is first phase, you were on MCRD San Diego. Second phase was like the field phase where we were up north. And then you had a third phase where you were actually down south. So what they did was they kind of switched it where it was like the first 8-9 weeks were on the depot. And then the last 4 weeks or so were up north at Camp Pendleton. So it was structured differently. So I remember getting selected to be like early chow and late chow. And I had kind of the ability to kind of interact with drill instructors more often because of the responsibilities that I had. And they heard my voice. Well, there were a few recruits that I didn't like. And I think that we all do, right? It's human interaction. You don't like kids. There was this kid named Gadzinski. And Gadzinski was one of the red captain bars, right? He was a fat kid that they monitored what he ate. So they monitored his chow. Every time after chow, he would serve, they would take a look at what he was eating, and then they would allow him to either take what he had or they would remove whatever he wasn't allowed to have. So I remember seeing Gadzinski one time, and he had packets of sugar that he had hidden between 2 slices of bread. So, and he got by the drill instructor. He goes by, they look at it, and they're like, go. So I see this fat bastard sit at the table, and he opens up these packs of sugar and puts them in his bread, and this fat bastard commences to eat a sugar sandwich. So I look at him and I'm like, oh, hell no, man. Because there was something inside of me, man. I didn't like the idea of him getting over. I didn't like the idea that he was just going to get by. And I knew that we had paid multiple times because of his inability to perform. So it's like, oh, no. I'm not going to be okay with you getting away with not just eating a sugar sandwich, but you're not going to be able to perform. You're going to continue to be an undisciplined pig. And now we're going to have to pay as a consequence. So I watch him and I give him an opportunity to make things right. I say, Gadzinski, I saw you eat that sandwich, you fat bastard. You need to confess, man, and tell the drill instructors what you did, or I'm going to tell them. And he's like, Estrada, you're a rat. And I was like, man, that hit me deep. It hit me deep. Like, he's going to call me a freaking rat? Like, you can't say that to me. But he was right. So now it made me twice as angry. So I was like, okay, fine. So I'm like, I kind of thought about it, man, because the neighborhood part of me was like, man, I can't snitch. I'm not a snitch. And we all know what happens with snitches, right? So I'm like, I'm not going to snitch. But I'm like, you know what? I don't like that kid. And it's not right. It's just not right. So now I got this like internal battle because like in the Marine Corps, they're preaching integrity. And I want this life-changing experience from recruit training. But then I've got this also like 18 years of growing up in a neighborhood, like you don't snitch. So I was like, man, you know what? I'm snitching today because Kaczynski's going to get it. He's going to pay. So I remember getting back to the squad bay and walking past the drill instructors because, you get in and everything's such a hurry, man. Hey, hurry up and go do this and go take a piss and go blah. So I remember walking by the drill instructor and I said, Kaczynski ate a sugar sandwich at Chow, sir. And I just kind of like said it as I was going to my rack. And I swear the drill instructor's arm must have grown like 8 feet because I said it in passing. He was like, he like pulls me back. He says, Estrada, what did you say? I was like, sir, Recruit Kaczynski ate a sugar sandwich, sir. And he was like, is that right? And he like grabbed me like this. He was like, Kaczynski. So Kaczynski just knew. He knew because he saw me. And, sir, yes, sir. He's like, come here. So he comes over and sure enough, man, he's like, did you eat a sugar sandwich? He's got me like this. So he's got me by the scruff of the neck. He's like, did you eat a sugar sandwich? Sir, no, sir. So he looks at me. He's like, Estrada? I'm like, again, like this, Yes, sir. He's like, Kaczynski, did you eat a sugar sandwich? He's like, yes, sir. Go away. He pushes me away and I just commence smoking this kid. So Kaczynski paid, man. He paid for it. I snitched, but he paid. So that's all I cared about. I just wanted him to get in trouble for what he did, man, because I didn't like the idea of him get away. I went to MCT. So in the early 90s, you went to, even as an infantry guy, you went to School of Infantry and Marine Combat Training. So now it's if you are a non-infantry MOS, you go to MCT. Everybody else goes directly to School of Infantry, right? If you're an infantry guy, you go directly to School of Infantry after recruit training. So we get to MCT. I'm in Marine Combat Training. And by this time, I'd really started kind of understanding a little bit more about what MOSs were, who's doing what, and all that stuff. And I had a few friends that it's kind of a cohort, right? You're in recruit training, you go through MCT together, and then you eventually see each other in the fleet and stuff. So a couple of my friends, I learned while we were in Marine Combat Training that they were infantry guys. So I was like, man, I want to be an infantry guy because you guys are infantry guys, right? Like, and I had gotten a taste of what it was like to be in the infantry because I had the field experience in recruit training. So I'd kind of developed this, idea of what that would be like and what it would look like and the idea of potentially doing it for the rest of my Marine Corps career. I was like, man, I think that's going to be pretty cool. I think I'd like to do that. So we're in recruit training, and this is where I also really began to kind of see how things work, right? So I'm in MCT, and we're in this is where the neighborhood comes out. The hood comes out of me. We're getting read all of our MOSs in MCT. So this corporal who's got all this responsibility is like, Abbott, 2111 armor. And he's like reading this occupational sheet. So what's happening is as he's going down, I'm recognizing that there's errors because someone's like, hey, wait a second, corporal, my recruiter told me I was going to be this. And he's like, what? Okay. So he jots it down. All right, so he starts going back down. Hey, so-and-so at this MOS, you're going to be an electrician, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. He's going up, and it's like logistics, you're going to be this. And somebody else would raise their hand. Corporal, my recruiter said I was going to do this. Or I came in contract Marine Corps Security Force Company. Or I came in this, or I came in this. So I started seeing all this, and I noticed that he was able to correct some of the things quickly. He was able, how is this corporal able to fix these problems? So I'm watching, analyzing, assessing. It says Estrada, communications. And I was going to be like a 35 or 25 something or other, like a field wireman or some crap. And I'm like, hey, corporal. He's like, yeah. I said, my recruiter told me I was infantry. He's like, fine, infantry. And I look at my buddies. I was like, dang, is that easy? The swipe of a pen by a corporal, he was able to fix that. Somehow, I never found out how or why, but I was like, okay. So sure enough, man, later on that day, all those that had said there was an error, some of them were fixed because they had been able to prove that. Somehow or another, they were, because I was already there probably, it was just easy. Hey, you're just going to go be an infantry guy. So I became an 0331 machine gunner at the swipe of a pen at MCT. It worked out for me. So I ended up becoming an 03 and going to school of infantry. And we did the sea bag drag from the Quonset huts down to the school of infantry barracks. And I got what I wanted. So I remember checking in at 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines in Marine Corps Base, Hawaii, right? Kaneohe Bay. And I remember we got there at night, and I don't know who the people were, what their billets were, or whatever. I remember just getting kind of all the boots that showed up that night. They brought over from the JRC, right? So when you arrive in Hawaii, they make you stay in these joint reception barracks for a few days to kind of get acclimatized, and then they give you all these safety briefs. Don't be fighting with the locals. You get beat up by these big monstrous human beings. Don't go to the beaches on a weekend unless you're going to be putting sunscreen on, because dudes that come from all over the country, they end up in Hawaii and then they get bubbled up because they get blisters from sunburn. Just giving us this, it's like a few days of just like what not to do. Typical of the Marine Corps, right? So then after that, you march over to your unit, and we ended up going to 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines. I was on weapons company, and I remember getting there, and it was like, I guess what it was like kind of showing up your first night of prison. It's like you get marched over, some dude shows up as the liaison, like, hey, you're going to be in so-and-so, you're going to be in so-and-so, and he kind of gives you a sign where you're going to be staying in the barracks or the squad bay or whatever, because we stood in squad bays, and we're going to get somebody to come get you and take you to your cell block, kind of thing. So I remember getting linen, and like we're marching now with linen. It's, I don't know what time. It's dark outside, I know. And this kid comes over, Rodriguez. And to Rodriguez, he goes through the few of us that are going to weapons company. He's like, where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? And I was like, I'm from Chicago. And he's like, okay, you stay here. So he sends everybody else off, and he's like, you say you're from Chicago? I say, I'm from Chicago. Now, here's the thing. It's what people don't know is when you say you're from Chicago, you better give me like a street and an intersection. Like if you're from the south side, it's a number and an annexing street. 63rd and Pulaski, 31st and Parnell. Like you better give me a street and its intersection. Otherwise, if you say something like, well, I'm from Joliet or Palatine or Peatone or whatever, we know you're not from Chicago. So, and people that are not from Chicago say they're from Chicago all the time. So he's like, where are you from? I said, from the south side. Where at? So I live on 31st and so-and-so. He's like, oh, okay, so you're from Chicago? I'm like, yeah. He's like, bro, you need to come to my room. I'm like, all right. Now, I don't know this guy from nothing. So I end up going to his room. He's like, you got to meet so-and-so. He's from Chicago too. So I'm like, all right. So I go back to the room. I go back to the barracks with him, and he's got DJ equipment. He's got like Technique 1200s. And this guy's got crates of records and speakers. And this guy's like a DJ. He's got his DJ equipment set up in his barracks room. So I'm like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. So then I walk in, and I see this kid who was an opposition gang, who was out of the same office that I was, and I nearly killed. But he recognized me. So in the recruiting office, I was recruited by Sanders. He was recruited by one of the other recruiters because of the high school that he had gone to. So we knew each other from pool functions, but he ran with a different mob. And we caught him one night. And I don't know why. I don't know. I had my Poolee t-shirt on, of all things to be wearing while I'm out gangbanging. I had my Marine Corps t-shirt on, and I had turned it inside out thinking that now I'm like invisible and nobody's going to know that I got a Marine Corps t-shirt on, right? We caught this kid in the park, and I put him on his knees, and I put a pistol in his mouth. I was about to execute this kid until he says, hey, you're joining the Marines, right? And I was like, how do you know that? Staff Sergeant Sanders is your recruiter. And I was like, yeah. He's like, Sergeant Owens is my recruiter. Like, you gotta be freaking kidding me, man. I can't do this. Like, this kid knows who I am. So I was like, I took my pistol whipped him. I was like, get out of here. This never happened. Never is spoken of again until I see him in the barracks room that night. So I'm like, what's up, bro? And he's like, what's up, man? I was like, you were out of the recruiting office. He's like, yeah. I said, you remember me? He's like, yeah. It's like, you ain't got to talk about the past, do we? It's like, nah. All right, cool. You good? I'm good. Shook hands. Never talked about it again.
What are the odds?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that was my welcome to 1st Battalion 3rd Marines Weapons Company. I ended up actually walking on the Marine Corps Base Hawaii's freestyle team. So I really started kind of assimilating, right? Like I recognized quickly that as long as you're in shape, as long as you show up on time, as long as you look good in uniform, you're going to be good in the Marine Corps, right? The leaders like you. They see, hey, Estrada kid, he's sharp. You know, he shows up on time. He's in shape. Never falls out of hikes. Never falls out of runs. You're a godsend if that's the case, right? That's how you succeed in the infantry. So I really started kind of like wanting to take in my Marine Corps experience. So I'd found out and heard, like I was fapped out to the range after our first deployment. They had what's called a fleet assistance program, right? Where they'd send you off to somewhere you work at the MP shack or you go work at the range or whatever. So I ended up going and working at the rifle range on the base for 6 months. While I was there, I began to meet a whole lot of different people from different occupations, right? It was like a networking event all the time because every week you're getting new shooters and different ranks. So I met this staff sergeant that was an MP. He was in pretty decent shape and he had cauliflower ear, right? Now I recognized it because I was a wrestler myself. So I say, hey, Staff Sergeant, where'd you get the ears from? And he's like, oh, I wrestle. So, oh, really? Where? He's like, well, actually here. It's like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, man, we have a base team. Like, really? He said, yeah, man, you got to come check it out. You wrestle? I said, yeah. He's like, come check us out. All right. So I started, like, throughout the entire week, we began to kind of develop this kind of professional relationship. By the end of the week, he was like my buddy. And he's like, hey, man, come check it out. You know, and we're calling each other by our first name, which was like completely foreign to me as a Lance Corporal calling a staff NCO by their first name. It was unheard of. But given the nature of the relationship that we had built on, you know, that week, he was like, hey, man, come join the team. And the lieutenant, so it was him and a lieutenant that kind of ran the team. And the lieutenant had wrestled for the Naval Academy. So he's like, come on out. So I came out. Started working out and training with Tom, and he's like, yeah, man, you're just kind of like, you walk onto the team, and as long as you show up to practices, you're going to be on a team, and you get to kind of, you know, do whatever we do. So I was like, this is pretty cool. I didn't get to like get orders. It wasn't like being on the Marine Corps team, but being part of the team. It was like an intramurals thing. I still got to train with them, still got to compete with them, and they did little small matches here with junior colleges and stuff, and the Marine Corps team came and put a whipping on us, and so it was kind of cool, but that was my experience at 1st Battalion 3rd Marines. Man, I did a couple of deployments. We did 2 UDPs to Okinawa. So we really, in that time of the Marine Corps, there wasn't really a whole lot going on in the early 90s. And even what did happen, we didn't get to partake in. So I did my first few years, and then I really started kind of opening my eyes to more of the Marine Corps, meeting other NCOs that were on their 2nd and 3rd duty station. Meeting other staff NCOs that were becoming part of the company as they were coming in. You start learning about different things that were going on. So I'd learned about becoming a coach at Edson Range. And I was like, man, that sounds pretty interesting. I want to be an instructor. I like to teach and I like to coach and mentor. So that was my next duty station. I had met a sergeant that had come from there and told me about it. And when it came my time to re-enlist, I talked to the career planner and said, hey, look, is that something that's available to me? And they said, yeah, sure, absolutely. It's your first termers incentive. If you re-enlist, you get your choice of what you want to do, where you want to go. And then I'm going from 1-3 to Edson Range at Camp Pendleton, becoming a coach. I'm at Edson Range. I'm there for a couple of years. It gets to a point where the headquarters recruiting screening team names come out. I was selected. I went and got checked in. Come to find out they want me on the team. I meet all the criteria. I don't like the idea of it, but I'm basically going to get orders at this point. They're going to execute them. So having been around drill instructors for the last couple of years, I had developed this affinity for what they did, and I wanted to be a drill instructor instead of recruiting, but they had already pulled my number. So now I got to go back to the company, tell people, hey, look, they're telling me that I'm probably going to end up going to a specific class. So I ended up talking to a gunny who was on recruiting duty. He tells me, hey, look, why don't you think about getting a by name request? This is completely foreign to me. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, well, you can go back to the command where you want to go. If it's back home, tell them to give you a by name request. That means that they'll call the school and tell you to go there. That they'll request you if they need you. Okay, cool. So I go home, tell the wife, hey, I think I'm going on recruiting duty, but this gunny told me I can do this. So I ended up telling my wife, she's like, hey, that's a great idea. I didn't really think that it was going to be a good idea, but it worked out. I ended up going on recruiting duty and coming back home. So having left Edson Range, ended up going to RS Chicago and being a recruiter in the recruiting office that I was recruited out of. So now I've gone from being the player to a coach, and I'm the actual coach. Now I'm recruiting kids that are in the area, in the neighborhood that I specifically came from. So in my mind, I had a personal vested interest on kids that I was recruiting because they were literally going to be my replacement. So one of the kids that comes to mind, his name was Rodrigo Roman. Rodrigo had migrated over from Mexico. His family brought him over at a pretty early age. He was probably 7 or 8 years old. And I remember hearing him in the distance. I was kind of in the office and heard him come into the office. Well, one of the recruiters had kind of screened him briefly when he walked in. Hey, what's going on, kid? He's like, yeah, I'm interested in the Marines. Spoke English well. It's not like he had an accent or anything. Like he was raised in Chicago most of his life. Just didn't have his stuff in order. So spoke to him, hey, what high school you go to? He kind of gets the typical stuff out. And he says, well, sorry, kid, I can't do anything for you. And I kind of like look over the stoop because by this time I was already an NCOIC of an office. So I had done well as a recruiter. I had become a meritorious promoted staff sergeant. I went out as a sergeant, picked up staff sergeant, and now I'm recruiting. I'm running a recruiting office. So I look over the thing where I'm sitting at my desk. I look over and I see the kid walk away. I was like, see, the kid's in pretty decent shape. So I take off. I pull the kid. I call him over. He comes over. I say, hey, man, tell me your story. So the kid tells me a story. I said, do you know if your parents ever applied for your citizenship, if they have applied for your residency or any of that stuff? So I started doing a little bit of investigative work. We had a contact that we were dealing with because in the inner city, we had dealt with a lot of kids that were dealing kind of with residency and stuff. So we had a woman that was real super helpful with us. So I called her up. I said, hey, look, I need to talk to you about this kid. So talked to her. She said, hey, this kid's got a number. He's got an A number. Like he's actually got a residency. They just have not yet mailed his card. So I was like, oh, snap. Okay, great. So we went and got the necessary paperwork to prove that he had actual residency. And then he had an issue with the school because his parents didn't really speak English very well. They were still kind of concerned about him joining the Marines. They didn't want interaction with us much. So I said, okay, well, hey, look, I'll take this kid. I went and took him from the school that was just gang infested, put him in alternative high school. He ended up graduating, doing well. Kid was in great shape, becomes a Marine. This kid becomes a Marine, ends up picking up Gunny. Fast forward, years later, I see this kid again, and he asks me to pin Gunny shirt runs on him. So this kid who at one point was literally given up on in a matter of seconds because of the answers that he had given, ended up doing an entire Marine Corps career of 20 years and retiring from the Pentagon of all places. His last duty station was the Pentagon because of this interaction that I had had. So there's a bunch of times where we've had opportunities, man, to cross paths with kids that become 8412s. They become career recruiters. And I've crossed paths with kids again. It's like, so not only was it cool to kind of be a recruiter in the neighborhood that I grew up in, but years later, after having completed my tour on recruiting duty, I left. I was gone for 5 years and came back. And then I ran that place as an NCOIC, running the office. Now I was like the manager of the team, right? So it was great experiences. I came around twice. I was a glutton for punishment. I was on recruiting duty 2 different times in my career, and in the same office that I recruited out of. 9/11, that morning, I was actually, the sergeant major was scheduled to come to my office. So when I was a recruiter, I was in this office, but when I had gotten promoted meritoriously and became an NCOIC of an office, they moved me to another one within the city. So I was now on the north side of the city where I was typically on the south side. So I'm driving to my recruiting office, and every month at the beginning of the month, the headquarters would send out a month in sight of where the command was going to be visiting. So the recruiter instructor was going to visit this office on this day. So you kind of knew you had it was called a matrix. So I knew that morning the sergeant major was going to come to my office. So I'm driving myself to work. I'm driving to work, and my brother called me. And I'm like, hey, what's going on, man? He says, hey, you watching the news? I'm like, no, I'm on my way to the office. What's up? He says, bro, you need to put the TV on. I'm like, what's going on? He says, the Twin Towers just got hit. I'm like, what? So he's explaining to me all this stuff. So we get to the office. I get to the office. Of course, we've got a TV, but it's like a VHS player with it. You know, like you don't have access to live TV. And in 2001, I don't know that we were looking at, the internet on phones either. So we're doing what we can to kind of try and get like an antenna onto the TV and try and watch the news. So as we're kind of fumbling around with that, the Sergeant Major shows up and he tells me. And at that time, I had submitted to become an 8412. So here we are, like in the process of becoming an 8412, going from an 8411 recruiter to a career recruiter. I had submitted my package and was just pending approval. So I had all the numbers. I had gone through the initial screening. Everything was good. And it was like I was just needing like a couple of signatures or rubber stamps. And I was basically going to be approved to become a career recruiter. And then this happens. And the Sergeant Major was a recon guy. And we had a great relationship. He liked me, again, because I was in shape and I was showed up on time and I did stuff. And so we had this great relationship. So the Sergeant Major said, hey, man, what are you going to do, Estrada? He has some choices. So what do you mean, Sergeant Major? He said, you going to stick around or are you going to try again in the shooting match? I said, I want out, Sergeant Major. He said, well, I guess we got to call the monitor. So, okay, well, let's call the monitor. So sure enough, call the monitor. Said, hey, Mess of Guns, I want, I know I got a career recruiter package in, but I want to get out. He's like, well, where are you trying to go? And I said, I want to get out of here and I want to go to first deploying unit. He said, well, where are you trying to go? I said, I'd love to go to 6th Marines. I want to wear the French Forget. I want to go to Camp Lejeune because it's in my mind, right? Because I don't want to divulge too much because if this guy knows everything that I want, he's gonna somehow find a way to screw it up for me, right? Because that's what the monitor does. So I'm trying to play chess with this guy, And I said, hey, look, man, I want to go to Camp Lejeune because in the back of my mind, Lejeune is only 16 hours from Chicago, where Pendleton's a lot further. So I said, man, I want to go to 6th Marines. He's like, okay. So I said, look, I want to go to first deploying unit. So that was September 11th. He gave me orders, man. In December, I reported to 1-6 of a Charlie Company 1-6 Cold Steel. And when I had gotten my orders, I had gotten orders pretty quickly. I reached out to the Sergeant Major, and the Sergeant Major was like, look, we're going to CAX in January. If you can get here December, I'll let you come home on leave for Christmas. So just come in and report in. So, I mean, you're talking within probably 60 days, man, I was up and gone. So having spoken to the Sergeant Major, I knew they were deploying in that spring, early summer. I told my wife, hey, just stay put. And I'll go to Camp Lejeune, check in. We'll do the Geo Bachelor thing for a few months after my first deployment. Then you can come out. And my wife, man, she's a gangster, bro. She had been doing this game with me for a few years by now. So she was like, all right, I'll do it. And so she stood put. She stood in Chicago while I left recruiting duty, and I reported in a 1-6, and away we went. So when I was at 1-6, the deployment we had done was we actually got to Okinawa, and from there we went to Bahrain and we were part of Marine Corps Security Force Company Bahrain, where we were doing counter-piracy missions. So the company got split. So some of the Marines had gotten tasked with just staying there on Bahrain, and they did kind of security on different tugboats. Some of the others had gotten split up. And my platoon got split, where the lieutenant was taking half the platoon and was on these merchant marine ships. And then I took the other half of the platoon and was on other merchant marine ships. So all we did was shipboard security throughout the entire Straits of Hormuz, throughout the Gulf of Aden, into the Gulf of Aden. And one of the things that we had gotten to do was ride the boats through the Straits, the Suez Canal into the Med, went to Sicily, and then from there flew back to Bahrain and just continued to do underway security for these merchant marine ships that were doing underway replenishments for all the USS ships. So what had happened is, because what happened with the USS Cole being hit, they made sure that they had security contingencies on every one of these boats, because they also didn't want them being overrun. So in certain parts off the coast of Somalia, these pirate ships would come up and they would kind of probe, or they would use the ships for screening because they were moving stuff illegally across the water. So they would use us really close as screens to kind of protect, and we never knew really whether or not they were a threat. So that was always pretty interesting because we were there to thwart the attacks of any Somali pirates. And there were a couple of times where they got really close, they got danger close, and we had to engage. So that was pretty interesting. They had these small boats. So there were some where there were speedboats. There were times where there was just fishermen. But if you know the story of the USS Cole, it's exactly what it was. There wasn't like this direct swarm of vehicle or swarm of boats that attacked it. It was just somebody, it was a fisherman just kind of waving and cruised right into the ship and detonated and caused this humongous hole in the hull of the ship and, caused a bunch of damage. Well, one of these particular times, the captain of the ship, we had a couple of different captains throughout the time because we were out there for several months. So throughout the time that we were there, we had actually a couple of different captains fly in. So it's kind of cool to see the different personalities of the individuals because these guys are 06 colonels. They wear chickens just like an 06 colonel in the Marine Corps or a captain of a Navy ship. Same exact rank structure. So these captains had different personalities. They come from different upbringings, right? So we had one guy that was really excited about training all the time. He loved the idea of having the Marines on. It was super cool. And every experience that I had with the different captains was great. But this guy was a bit more ambitious than others. And we were drilling all the time. And it paid off because one of the times we had this swarm of speedboats that were coming at us. And we had gone through our escalation of force and continuum force of popping flares and putting stuff on the radio. Hey, stay back, or you'll be shot. And they continued. So as they continued to approach, we get on the radio like, hey, give them one, right? So we had 50 cals. We had dual 50 cals on each side of the ship. And let them go. And they kept coming. So they continued to approach. As they were getting closer and closer, and we're continuing to move, I see one that's kind of coming up, and I'm like, I have an M79 blooper gun. If you know what that is, it's a single shot 40 millimeter like shotgun. It literally breaks down like a shotgun. You have one 40 millimeter grenade. I pop this thing up, I put the leaf sights up, and I started looking, and as it's coming, 50 cals kind of let him go. Boom. They kind of start pulling back, but now he's creeping, and now he's slowed down. So I'm just like, so I let this thing go. And if this thing hits at zero obliquity, if it hits flat on water, they'll detonate these 40 millimeter grenade launchers. So boom, I let this thing go. It doesn't hit at zero. In fact, what happens, it hits the water, it skips onto the actual boat and detonates. I was like, holy cow, what are the chances of that, man? So you just start seeing the guys panic on, like one guy starts leaking and they start tending to him and the boat starts leaking and they start tending to the hole in the boat now. So it was pretty interesting. That was one of a whole lot of other stories that we had going on that boat, man, because it was a great time. All we're doing as a Marine, just like any other boat, we had no responsibility other than providing security. So all we did was jack steel, eat, and play video games and fight each other. So we had this QRF room and we didn't have a whole lot of furniture. So we would just sit on the ammo crates. So go to chow. That's all we did. We ate, we lifted weights, and played video games. That's all we had to do. So I remember going to chow one time, and there was a pallet of Girl Scouts cookies. And I remember walking by, kind of checking it out. Every time I'd walk by, I was like, man, I don't want to be the one that breaks it open. Like those clearly are not for me, right? If they were for me or for the Marines, somebody would have told us, and we would have been given the cookies. So I remember going to chow one day, and then walking by, and I had seen that the pallet had been kind of broken into and the boxes were open. So I'm like, okay, well, hey, my day's coming, right? At some point, whoever the owner is, the rightful owner, they've now opened the box and they're going to be like, hey, everybody want cookies. So eventually we'll get some. So because on ship, just like in boot camp, it's like you go meal to meal, right? So the next meal, I'm walking by the pallet again, and now it's being reduced. Like I see cookies like missing from the pallet. But again, they're not mine, so I don't know who the rightful owner is, so I'm not going to just take them. So I'm walking by, go to chow, come back, and next thing you know, there's more cookies gone. So with every meal, there's fewer cookies, and no one still has let me know that there are cookies. So one time I come back into the QRF room, into our room where we got all our stuff staged. And instead of one of my Marines sitting on an ammo crate, he's sitting on a box of Girl Scout cookies. So I'm like, hey, where did you get those cookies? He's like, from the pallet. It's like the pallet on the well deck. Yeah. Who said you could take those? He's like, nobody. It's like, well, what the hell are you doing with the cookies, man? And he's now sitting on them. Like he literally replaced a box of ammo that we used for our chair with a box of cookies. So I was like, well, where's the ammo crate? He's like, oh, I put it in the storage locker. I'm like, well, where's the ammo? I open it up, and this jagoff is the one that had been taking all the cookies. There's boxes of Girl Scout cookies in our ammo locker, and he had taken all the ammo and put it somewhere completely different. He was the one that had opened it. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? You better put those cookies back. So he's like, I can't take them back. No, that's not like it. I said, well, who do you belong to? He's like, I don't know. It's like, you're freaking stealing. And now we have boxes of them. So now we have to just sit here and eat probably 6 or 8 boxes of Girl Scout cookies so we could put the ammo back in our bunker because this knucklehead took them all out on that shit, because like it's all that we did. Lift weights, eat, that's it, right? We had a guy, we had this kid, I don't know where he was from, the SK1, right? The storekeeper. This kid, he was a Navy guy, had kind of a bit of a belly on him, a white dude, but he had grown up kind of a roughneck. And I don't know where he was from, like Atlanta or something, man. He had this kind of like really laid back attitude. And we got along with him really well. He's a cool guy. He ran the ship store. So of course we're going to be cool with him. So it's probably 3 a.m. and I'm not a big video game guy, but it was a way to kind of interact with the Marines and hang out, right? So I'm a staff sergeant. I got a bunch of Lance Corporals and Corporal NCOs that are on the ship with me. And so it's basically like a squad and a half of infantry platoon, right? So we're playing video games probably 3 a.m. and I've got a box of Fiddle Faddle. You know what Fiddle Faddle is? Fiddle Faddle is like Cracker Jacks, but they have different flavors, like toffee flavor, caramel flavor. It's not just caramel like Cracker Jacks. And I have a box of it. So I'm sitting there playing this video game. It's like I don't even know the name of the game, but I'm sitting there playing this like single shooter game, Call of Duty maybe. And I'm playing, and the kid asks me, one of my Marines at Corporal, he says, hey, Staff Sergeant, could I have some of your Fiddle Faddle? So I'm like, yeah, sure. Now, at this point, I've got decisions. I got choices to make, right? Do I just hand it over to him and let him choose the amount of ration that he uses, right? That he issues himself? Or do I pour it? Or do I hold the box, right? And I'm like, yeah, bro, whatever. So I'm playing the video game. I'm watching. I'm playing. And then all of a sudden I hear, and I'm like, pause. Like, what are you doing? It's like, I finished it. You what? I finished it. Like, yeah, I heard you, but I'm just wondering, why would you do that? I mean, were you raised by wolves? Who does that? Who finishes a man's anything without asking? Like, I didn't say, yeah, go and finish it, go and kill it, right? Like, you have to be licensed. You have to be given authority to finish a man's anything. And then he just completely says, I said, well, you know what? That's fine. Don't worry about it. Hey, go wake SK1 up and tell him I need another box. He's like, I can't do that. Said, no, you will do that, killer. You will do that. You will go wake up the store clerk and let him know that we need another box. We need another box of Fiddle Faddle. So now this corporal's like, come on, Staff Sergeant. What you gonna make me? And an SK1, a storekeeper 1 is an E6, right? And this kid's a corporal. He's got to go wake up a staff NCO essentially to go open the store at 3 a.m. because he wants to be a savage and eat my last bit of Fiddle Faddle. So now he's like, come on, Staff Sergeant, don't make me do this. No. You're going to, hey, go wake him up right now. Go wake him up. Staff Sergeant, you serious? He's like trying to like negotiate with us. Like, get out. Go now. So there he goes. He wanders off and goes wake up the SK1 at 3 a.m. to open the damn ship store. So the SK1 comes back, and this guy's got like basketball shorts on and an oversized wife beater. And he's like, hey, Staff Sergeant, you tell this Marine to come wake me up? I was like, yeah. Did he tell you what he did? Yeah. He's like, you can wake me up for a box of Fiddle Faddle? I said, no, matter of fact, make it 2. He said, you want me to open the ship store right now at 3 a.m. for your food? I said, yes, I do. I said, is there a problem, SK1? No, I guess not. Let's go. Come on, stupid. So he took my Marine, goes over to the ship store at 3 in the morning to go get me a bag. They have 2 boxes of fiddle faddle. But that'll learn you, right? Like, you don't finish a man's anything, man. What are you thinking?
That's crazy.
So he went and opened the store for me. Got me 2 boxes of fiddle faddle. So we come back from that deployment, and now I had gotten deployed. I did my 1 deployment. The 8412 thing didn't work out. I was really trying to stay home, and we're just at a kind of a point in my life and my career. I was like, hey, look, I think I've kind of done everything I wanted to do. After the deployment, it was kind of fun and great times. And they dropped me. So I said, hey, look, I'm going to get out. I'm going to get out at this point. So I applied for Chicago Police Department. I applied for Chicago Fire Department and was looking to kind of transition out as a staff sergeant. I was going to get out of the Marine Corps, come home and be the police or be a fireman. And so what happened was there was a point where the battalion basically said, all right, we're going to they got chopped to the mew. They were going to start doing workups, getting ready for their next deployment cycle. And they sent me to regiment. So I'm at regiment, and I still had some time left on my contract. So at the regimental headquarters, 6 Marines at the time, the regimental commander was a really good dude, man. Dave Garza was a colonel. Dave Garza just really took a liking to me for whatever reason. And he was a great guy. He hadn't been, he had his wife, Carrie, he's called his girlfriend all the time. He was like, that's my girl, Carrie. And it's my girlfriend. So they didn't have kids. But he really took care of everybody at the regiment. He'd have people over his house all the time. He would cook for everybody. He was a really good dude. And he wanted me to stay in. And I said, hey, Colonel Garza, I'm going to get out. I don't want to stay in. I think I'm good. I've already tested for Chicago Police and Chicago Fire. I'm looking to go home. So he said, here's the deal. Let's call your monitor. So he called the monitor. 06 Colonel, regimental commander, calls the monitor on the staff sergeant's behalf. Now, as time's going by, I ended up getting selected for Gunny. So he would always call me Lance Gunny because I was going to become a Gunny. So he would call me Lance Gunny. So he calls the monitor, says, hey, monitor, the Master Gunny, I can't think of the guy's name at the time, third bag anyway. So he calls the monitor, says, hey, look, I got this guy who's a Lance Gunny. He's been selected a Gunny. He's going to get out. I think this guy's talented. I don't want him to get out. We got to do something for him. So he calls the monitor on my behalf. He said, well, we got some options. So I didn't think anything of it. I come home. So because I'm at the regiment, they let me kind of start doing things to transition out. I took an EMT course. So I was going to school. They were letting me do this stuff because I was going to EAS within, 6 months or so. So I took the EMT course, and JTF Liberia kicked off. And I was like, man, this may be one more little hoorah before I get out. So I talked to the sergeant major, and I ended up going to JTF Liberia and being part of the 173rd Airborne Brigade as an individual augment when they evacuated the U.S. Embassy in Monrovia, Liberia. Yeah, so I got to do that before I ended up getting out. So I spent a few months over with 173rd Airborne Brigade out of Vicenza, Italy during that event, came back. And so now I'm at home, Camp Lejeune. I got a few months to go. And before I get out, I'm at the range, and I'm the staff non-fire for the range. So I remember at transition, they called me at the center line. The sound car calls me and says, hey, you got orders. I said, really? To where? So that's when they told me they got orders to this JTF. So it's pretty cool. I ended up getting deployed for, it was like just under 120 days. Got to do that before I transitioned out because of, the colonel and sergeant major. They knew what I wanted to do. They knew where I wanted to be. And they knew I wanted one little last hoorah before I left. I remember getting to Italy because I found out on a Thursday and I was gone Saturday morning. So I had maybe 36 hours to get ready and leave. And my wife was right there alongside the entire time, man. I came home Thursday, like, babe, I gotta deploy. And she's like, where are you going? I said, oh, Liberia, Africa. And she's like, when do you leave? I was like, Saturday. So I ended up getting there. There were a bunch of other Marines that they had activated all these line numbers to create the table of organization that they needed, and they basically hyper activated it. Everybody gets there, and then they started kind of trimming the fat off and keeping only the occupations that they needed. So there were a few people that had gotten sent away, and I remember calling my wife, and I'm like, "Hey, look, I talked to this Army operations sergeant major, and he said they're going to start sending people home." And she's like, "Okay, well, if they don't need you, you need to come home." I'm like, "Well, babe, I don't know. I mean, in my mind, I'm like, I'm trying to get myself into Liberia, get another shooting match before I get out, trying to get into something." So she's like, "No, if they don't need you, you need to bring your butt home." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, babe, you got it. Absolutely." So we had this conversation with the sergeant major. This guy was kind of the one that was keeping everybody apprised of what's happening, who's staying, who's going to go into Liberia, who's going to stay in Italy. And he says, "Hey, look," and I remember he's this country guy. I was like, "Hey, look, devil dog." And he was an Army guy, so it's kind of unusual for them to refer to us as devil dogs. But he was like, "Hey, look, devil dog, you look like you're going to end up having to stay here in Italy." So I'm like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "I don't know if we're going to be able to get you into Liberia right now. You don't know if you're going to go forward." So I was like, "Okay, so I'm staying here in Italy for the next 3 or 4 months?" He's like, "Yeah, look like you may be stuck in Italy." I said, "All right, well, okay, I want to be sure because I want to tell my wife." And I remember calling, like, "Babe," so I talked to Sergeant Major. And she's like, "Okay." I said, "It appears that I'll probably be stuck in Italy." And she's like, "There's no such thing as being stuck in Italy. It's like an oxymoron. You're not stuck in Italy. If they don't need you, you need to bring your butt back home." I'm like, "Okay, well, I don't know what to tell you." So the Sergeant Major said, "But he's a Sergeant Major. I'm just a staff sergeant. What am I going to do?" So I ended up being stuck in Italy for the next few months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it wasn't bad, believe me. So after 1-6, while I was actually at the regiment, the monitor and the colonel continued to have conversations. So I'm at home one night, and a buddy of mine had just come back. Because now this is after, so the invasion of Baghdad was March of 03, right? The March to Baghdad was March of 03. So I had a couple of guys, some buddies of mine that were 8th Marines that had come home. My buddy Rich Pula had a big red pickup truck. He was at my house one night and leaves. Like within seconds, there's a knock on the door, and I thought maybe Rich had just left his car keys or something. So I was like, "Oh, it's not." I say, "Babe, did Rich leave his stuff?" So I don't see any car keys or anything, a bag. And she's like, "No." So I'm like, "Who the heck's at the door?" So I look out and I see a red pickup truck. So I open the door. It's Colonel Dave Garza at my door, like at my house, base housing, Staff NCO base housing. Colonel Garza's here. So I was like, "Good evening, sir. What's going on?" He's like, "Hey, what's going on? Let's go and take a seat." So he comes in, like pushes me out of the way, and the sergeant major's with them. "Hey, sergeant major's going on." He's like, "Hey, sorry about this." They're both in camis. It's like friggin' 1800, 1900. And these guys walk into my house. So I'm like, "Babe, Colonel Garza's here," and Sergeant Major. And she's like in the kitchen. She kind of peeks her head around. She's like, "Good evening. What's going on?" He's like, "Christina," and he knew my wife's name. Like I said, he knew everybody at the regiment. He's like, "Christina, come and sit down. Come and sit down." I'm like, okay. So we're literally getting ready for dinner. He's taking the dinner plates like off the table. He's like clearing the table for him. He's like, sit down. I need you to sit down." So Sergeant Major's like, "Hey, I'm sorry." He's like, so I'm like, "Okay, what's going on, Colonel? What can I do for you, sir? What's going on? Why are you here in my house?" He's like, "Look, here's the thing. I called your monitor." I was like, "Okay." He said, "We've got options." And he literally had a naval formatted letter addressed to me from him. He hands me a copy, hands my wife a copy, he gives the Sergeant Major a copy, he's got a copy for himself. I'm like, "Okay, what's going on here?" He's like, "Okay, we have 5 options. We have hot fills." So, okay. He's like, "First one, Camp Courtney, Okinawa." So I'm like, "I don't want to go to Okinawa." He's like, "Oh, why would you want to go to Okinawa?" Scratches that out. He's like, "Korea, a company tour. Christina, would you like to go to Korea?" And she's like, "No, Colonel. I mean, my husband's already started the process. He's going to become a Chicago fireman, Chicago policeman. Like, we want out." I said, "Okay, well, Korea, why would you want to go to Korea? You're trying to be a policeman?" He's crossed out. He goes through, he's like, "What about 3rd Marine Division?" I said, "Isn't that Okinawa?" He's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Oh, we don't want that." Marine Corps Base Hawaii. I remember these choices. He's like, "Marine Corps Base Hawaii." I was like, I was already with 1-3. I was in Hawaii. I mean, it's far from home. Like, Camp Lejeune's closer than Hawaii. He's like, "Hey, up at Base Hawaii." Last one, I&I duty, 2nd Battalion, 24th Marines Weapons Company. And I was like, where's that at? He's like, Waukegan, Illinois. So I'm thinking to myself, like, Waukegan. I look at my wife, I'm like, Waukegan, where's that at? She's like, oh, that's where Creed America is. It's like, he's like, it's 60 miles door to door from your home of record. This guy, it wasn't Google, it was like MapQuest. He MapQuested my home of record to the INI station. He's like, so it takes you back home. If you want to continue to be a fireman in Chicago police, you can at least start the process while you're home on INI duty. And I was like, dang, may not be a bad idea. This is well, Colonel, we got a lot to think about, man. Just 30 seconds ago before we walked in here, we're getting out of the Marine Corps, And he's like, yeah, okay, well, think about it. So as they take off, my wife and I talk about it, call back home, talk to family, talk to all these people. We're like, all right, hey, maybe we'll just execute the orders and do it anyways. I was already going to pick up Gunny. So this is December of 2003. I check in. I know the major. I happen to know him from a previous duty station when I was at Edson Range. So he's like, hey, Staff Sergeant, what's going on? Hey, how you doing? Catching up. He's like, oh, it looks like you've been around a little bit. He's like, I was a stack of ribbons. He's like, man, that's great. We're really looking forward to having your experience here. We could use you. He's like, you're in an integrated billet. And I'm like, I have no idea what that is. He's like, well, that means if we get deployed and activated, you go with. And we're getting deployed and activated, so you're going with. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? I just got back 2 months ago from the JTF. So I came back from deployment. I was back for a couple months, go to JTF, come back. 2 months later, I get orders to go to INI duty. And now I'm finding out 4 months later, we're going for a year. So I have to now turn around in my alphas, go back home and tell my wife, like, yeah, we're coming home so I can continue to transition into the civilian world. And now I'm getting deployed for a year with the reservists.
Where are you going?
Iraq.
How'd your wife take that?
She was not happy. She was not happy, man. So yeah, sure enough, a few months later, we were gone. So that deployment was pretty cool. I ended up picking up Gunny just a couple weeks after. Pick up Gunny. I was the operations chief for the weapons company. And it was weird because I had never been with reservists, right? To this point, I'm now a Gunny. I had not been around reservists. Didn't really know much about it. So there was a whole lot of learning going on prior to getting there. And but once they put me into a platoon, so they had formed what was called a PSD, the Protective Security Detachment. So I ended up becoming the colonel's PSD. So I was the commander we had a platoon. And he had said, look, I need you to select a platoon size element, so about 30 guys. I said, okay, well, here's the deal, colonels. I need men to choose from. So the colonel chose me. There was a couple of other options that they had done. And I remember we had this big battalion shooting competition. And I was the only guy in the entire battalion that outshot the colonel. So the colonel was an Indiana state trooper and was pretty good with a pistol. And when I outshot him, he, instead of being threatened by, was like, I like this guy, and chose me to be the commander for the PSD. So here I am, a Gunny, and I got to be a commander first. I had a sergeant that was a platoon sergeant for me, and we had 29 guys in a platoon. So it was a great deployment, man. Great opportunity to do a lot of stuff. We got a couple shooting matches here and there, so we got our fair share of action out of the 28 guys, because one got hurt right before we deployed. We had 13 Purple Hearts-ish in our platoon, man. So we ended up, from the FOB, got a call. So we were rotating. So within the weapons company, because we're still part of weapons company, we had gotten a rotation of who was going to be on the QRF. So it was our turn to be on QRF. So we're on standby. We're going to be tethered. Well, this is during Operation Phantom Fury. So in November 2004, it's the second invasion of Fallujah. So as the U.S. forces began to kind of push north through Fallujah, they were pushing forces into our AO. So we weren't in Fallujah, we were just south of it. So a lot of the bad guys that were getting pushed out of Fallujah were coming into our area of operation. And our northernmost company was Fox Company. The Fox Company commander happened to be on our FOB. So they started taking contact because these guys were getting pushed basically from Fallujah into our area. And we had established a pretty decent size footprint So the company basically began to push out platoon size elements and then squad size elements, where these guys began to start taking contact and having to collapse back into the platoon size reinforced positions, and then eventually the company fob and getting in shooting matches. So they said, hey, look, we need the QRF now. So we grab the QRF, we grab a platoon, we grab the company commander so that he can be at his company element. And we get loaded up. And as we start going over there, we start, getting intelligence on the radio. We're finding out all this stuff that's happening. So we're on this canal road, and my lead vehicle says, hey, man, I see some suspicious activity. We see some guys in the bushes. So there was a canal, and there's a canal banks, and the lead vehicle had seen some activity on the bank, in the bank where the bushes were. So it's like, okay, cool, let's figure it out. So we send one vehicle across the canal to kind of look into it. So now our vehicles pull up, and we're kind of parallel to them. So they jump out, and these guys are strapped, man. They've got chest rigs, they've got weapons, and they had been dug in and hidden behind the bushes in this canal bank. So it's kind of like, okay, well, let's just investigate to immediately like, hey, everybody's, let me see your hands, let me see your hands. So these guys come out, and you see them come up out of this fighting position, man. And as soon as they start coming up, you see they got chest rigs. And these guys got weapons. So they start pulling them out, pull these guys out, start ripping all this stuff off of them. And then it just starts happening. And you start hearing these very distinct sounds, man, because when indirect fire comes and IEDs detonate, they make a very distinct sound. It's when you're close to the explosion, you hear and then it's a boom, right? So that sound of air being sucked out of the atmosphere, it's fast, but it happens slowly. There's a delay, bang, and then you feel concussion, right? You just feel blast. And that's exactly what began happening. And then you hear these snaps, right? And now rounds are flying, and I see my Marines are getting these guys in the back of this vehicle. So they strip them of everything that they've got, throw in the back of the Humvee, and now we are basically in this ambush, and we have no idea. So now it's like, find somebody to kill, right? So now we essentially, what happened was we later found out that we initiated the ambush prematurely. We were not quite in the kill zone, but because those guys had been discovered, they began to initiate the ambush on us. Indirect fire, small arms fire. And then what we did was, we're on a canal road, man. You can either go forward or backward. So what we thought was that we were in the kill zone. So what do? We push forward just like normal, right? Get those guys, get back into the vehicle, and we're going to push through and figure out where these guys are coming from. And man, right where we're at, we get out and just start shooting, because these guys are in the bank and we're in hand grenade throwing distance to these guys, man. And we start getting in a shooting match. And I remember seeing a guy in the bushes, and he pops up. He's got an RPG. And in slow motion, I see that thing go, and it hits my lead vehicle. And the vehicle commander, Sergeant Manali, is inside of the door jamb, and he's getting after it. Boom, boom, boom. And he was a big dude, man, big Navajo Indian. Big guy. He was probably, I'm 5'7", man. He's probably 5'10" and easily over 200 pounds in full kit. The guy's probably 240 pounds. And I remember seeing that thing go and hit the lead vehicle. Boom. And I saw him go backwards, man, from feet to back, bro. And he's on his back. And now it's like, so now you're seeing muzzle flashes, you see guys popping up, and it's just like, you hear all the sounds, the ding 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 ding, and we're getting after it. But then this guy goes down. I see him low crawling, and he gets another one. So now we're literally in it, bro, because these things are stashed. These guys would pop up, shoot an RPG, get down, and run over to the next one, pop them up. So they were staged. And we had this long chain, and I have no idea how long it's going to take before we get to the end of it. So now we're just throwing hand grenades, man. We're in hand grenade range of it. And my lead Vic gets hit. So we have to pull up another vehicle alongside of it, extract these guys out, because the gunner ended up getting hurt. He was in a turret. And when that RPG hit that vehicle, it caused a whirlwind, man. So two of my guys, the driver, the back passenger, he's got shrapnel in his face and his neck and his hands. The driver's got shrapnel in him. The turret gunner ends up getting his legs completely peppered, severs Achilles tendon. The vehicle commander's on his back. So we pull up alongside a technique that we had practiced over and over again to recover vehicles, man. So we get the wounded inside the vehicle, we get them, and then kind of pushed up. We get in this shooting match, man. And by the end of that deployment, I think by the end of that day, we ended up 5 guys getting hit, man. We had a guy get shot in the face. It gotten shot through the trunk, that Kevlar trunk that we had thrown the guys in the back of that vehicle. The round went through the Kevlar trunk, went through an inch of homogeneous steel that was around him, hits him in the back of the jaw, breaks his jaw, starts coming out of front of his mouth, breaks his teeth, and he spits the bullet out. Yeah. Yeah, dude. So he ended up having to go home because all the bone fragmentation that had gotten stuffed in his sinuses because of when he hit, it went through the Kevlar, went through the steel, and then broke his jaw. And as it was exiting, jacked his teeth up too. It was rough, man. Because, I mean, it was during Operation Phantom Fury, so things were active, you know, I mean, and we had been pushed out. It was cool because being a reserve battalion, we were one of the very few, if any, that I know the history. I don't necessarily know the landscape at that large a scale, but we were a reserve battalion that had its own AO, right? They didn't put us on FOB security at Camp Blue Diamond or anything like that, like they did with 25th Marines or Camp Fallujah. They just had, you know, a battalion. I was like, you're just going to be a FOB security. No. We had our own FOB. We had multiple FOBs. We pushed out and began creating more and more FOBs. And it was a great opportunity, man, for us to really kind of get some experience and get our guys dirty, man, and get some of the stuff that we went over to do. You know, I mean, we had a lot of guys hurt, and unfortunately, we lost some dudes. That's always sad, but you know, those guys went out on their shields and did what they wanted to do, you know. So, getting back from the deployment, I had known that I wanted to kind of, again, man, I still kind of pursue the idea of staying in Chicago. It's like, okay, how can I maximize my time here? Right. If anything that I learned from recruiting duty was like literally trying to maximize the utility of your time. And how can I do that? Like being a reservist, being where I knew I wanted to retire at, like what could I do to kind of get myself embedded in the Chicagoland area? And I had come across a guy that I was on recruiting duty with and had become a career recruiter. So like I was senior, I left, I was gone for 5 years. But this guy came in after. And then kind of when things died down, he became a career recruiter. So I came in contact with him again. And he was like, hey, man, what's going on? So we were catching up. He's like, well, why don't you try again? The Sergeant Major is a really cool dude. He's a recon guy. And he'd probably like you. All right. So I reached out to the recruiting station, introduced myself, let him know I just come back. He appreciated that. And I said, hey, Sergeant Major, what are your thoughts on me coming back to recruiting duty as a second tour? And it happened. So I came back to recruiting duty. That's when I came back. So I had a great career, man, because I was on I&I duty, did a deployment with them, did a combat deployment with them, and then came back and was able to punch out. I only did just over 2 years with them, and then transitioned literally right next door to RS Chicago and went back on recruiting duty for a second tour. So I thought, okay, hey, look, I'm a gunny. If I stay on recruiting duty, I can put M on I had been putting M on my fitness reports because I kind of thought about that. Where I can always put F or M and decide later. So when you become a gunny, you have to choose on your fitness report if you want to become a master sergeant or first sergeant. So if you put F, you'll be considered for both. If you put M, you'll only be considered for master sergeant. So I put M on my fitness report knowing that I wanted to do that. So I got selected for master sergeant. The problem was when I got on recruiting duty and I got selected for master sergeant, the Marine Corps had changed the policy that you can no longer become a 12. Because it was like, all right, hey, look, I'll come back, become a master sergeant, come back for a second tour, and then I'll become an 8412 and finish out my time as an 8412. Well, the problem was the Marine Corps said, hey, no more master sergeants to become 8412s. I was still an 0369. So my intent was to become an 8412 career recruiter lat move essentially from 0369 to become a career creator for 12 and finish my time out in Chicago. That was my plan. It's not quite how it worked out though, because the Marine Corps said no more mass sergeants will transition to become a career recruiter 8412. So I get selected, get promoted, and within 3 months of being a mass sergeant, they said no more. So now it's like, what am I going to do? So I had to write out my time on recruiting duty to as an 8412, as an 0369, and I was not going to be able to transition. So I had to do my 3 years and then take off from there. So much for becoming a career recruiter and finish off in Chicago. It didn't happen that way.
Where'd you end up?
29 Palms.
Oh man, talk to me about getting there.
That was terrible, man, because it was heartbreaking. I knew a guy who was a mass sergeant, and once you start getting to that kind of 0369 mass sergeant rank, there aren't a lot of mass sergeants in the Marine Corps 0369s. So I knew a guy who's at Fast Company, and he's a fleet anti-terror security company on the East Coast. I reached out to him because we were friends and I had met previously in my career. I knew he was getting out. I knew he was retiring. And I said, hey, man, is there any spots available over there for a mass sergeant? Because I'm getting off recruiting duty now. So I wanted to try and transition and try and find a spot for me to go. I have always wanted to go to Fast Company, never got a chance to do it. It's like, man, maybe I know that they have like operations chiefs. I'll do that now, see if I can do it. Because getting off recruiting duty, I was hoping to kind of get like my own choice, right? Like, so talk to the monitor, talk to him. Monitor said, hey, look, man, well, let me think about where my needs are first, blah, 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 yeah, whatever. So I talked to my buddy, talked to his commanding officer. They do kind of an interview on the phone. Everything's cool. They're good with it. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm good. I'm set. I'm up to transition. I did my 3 years here on recruiting duty. I'm looking to get out of here. There's a space there at Fast Company. I know the guy who's leaving. It should be clean. He and I'll call the monitor. The monitor is going to love this idea, right? He don't have to do any work. Call the monitor, and of course, he doesn't like the idea. He's like, I don't know who you two idiots think you are. It's my job. I know the needs of the Marine Corps. You idiots. That's it. All right, man, whatever. So I'm thinking we're good because his CO is good with it. The mass sergeant's good with it. I'm good with it. We're all good. We talked to the monitor. We're hoping that the monitor is going to buy off on it. I remember it was probably a week or so later, one of my Marines was also due for orders. So he gets his orders. He's checking his email. He's like, hey, Top, I got my orders. I was like, oh, no way. And he's scrolling through. I was like, where are you going? And as he's scrolling through, he's like, Top, you may want to take a look at this. So I'm like, oh, what's up? So I walk over. He's like, you have orders too. And for some reason, they attached both of ours together in this email. So I walk over. He scrolls up. I was like, okay. 29 Palms. What the heck is this? I'm thinking in my mind, man, I'm going to Virginia. It's all good. We're good. Like the monitor was going to get over it. No, he sends me to 29 Palms, Marine Corps Tactics and Operations Group, a new unit that had just been built, and they need mass sergeants. So I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding. And when I talked to him, I said, hey, look, Master Gun, send me to Hawaii, send me to Okinawa, send me to Camp Pendleton, send me to Camp Lejeune. Doesn't matter. Send me any one of those 4 places. 29 Palms. So I end up getting orders, got to tell the wife we're going to 29 Palms. August, hot as heck out. My son is a sophomore in high school, man. So we go in. He's cool because he's going to an all-boys school. So we get to California. He's like, gets to wear a wife beater and board shorts and a hat and earrings to school. So he loves the idea of it, but he plays football. So now we walk in August, 29 Palms, and he's walking right into 2-a-days of football practice. So that was his immersion into 29 Palms. To me, it's like, it's hot as heck out, man. We're high altitude. It sucked. But the command itself was kind of strange because it was new, right? And in any new environment, it didn't matter the rank. You're around infantry guys. Everybody wants to sniff your butt like, like a dog. You kind of, who's the alpha male and where have you been and what have you done? And so it seemed like I have to give a resume to everybody that I introduced myself to, which was kind of strange. It later kind of wore off once we kind of really started identifying what our roles were within the command. And it was a great job, by the way. It was super cool. what we did is it was a training command that went to infantry battalions and basically prepared them for their deployment. So if a unit we knew, like say 1-5 was going to go to Sangin, like in this case, like 3-5 was going to Sangin, what we would do is we would get with the unit that was there, take all their SIGACs, all their significant events and reports, and we would create scenarios for them to go through the exact same thing. So the grid coordinates, all of the locations, the prominent terrain features, they were all familiar to them through training. So when they got there in real life, they had already kind of experienced somewhat. So it was a great opportunity. But while I was there, I had actually finagled my way again into becoming an advisor to the Republic of Georgia, because the division was sending people over. So even though I was in a training command, they let me go on a deployment to be part of 2nd Marine Division and 2nd Marine Regiment, and was there as an advisor to the Republic of Georgia, the 32nd Georgian Battalion in Camp Delaram. So when I was there, I checked in. So other than training, that was probably the most significant thing that I got to do when I was in 29 Palms, was deploy to Afghanistan as an advisor, because it was a completely unique experience. It's not like going as a battalion. Again, I was an individual augment, and I'm going into this completely new environment. And I found myself within 48 hours of being on the ground, I was in the roughest part of the entire country, because I checked in to the regiment. They said, okay, hey, go down to the battalion. So I check into the Georgian battalion. I'm doing the sea bag drag. I take all my stuff. I go to the headquarters, to COC. I check in. And I was in there I don't even know where the pisser was. And I get a phone call. So I'm standing in the COC and things are buzzing and all kind of noises and lights and stuff are going off. And I see there's a couple Marines. I come to find out these guys are Anglican guys. They help direct all the air naval and the air while they were there. So I get a phone call from the battle captain and some Georgian captains, like, Easter Master Sergeant Estrada here. I was like, what the hell? Like, yeah, that's me. You have a phone call. How do I have a phone call? And who even knows that I'm here? So I walk over, I grab the phone, and Master Estrada speaking, and it's a captain from the watch commander from the regiment, and he's tearing me up. What the hell are you doing down there, Master? What is going on? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, so I don't even know who you are. Like, what are you talking about? Come to find out, the Georgians were on patrol. IED goes off. They basically turn to the blast and just start shooting. They had shot an old man and his granddaughter. They shot her in the knee and shot her leg off. They blew her leg off. So the old man takes one to the gut and the little girl loses a leg. And it was my fault somehow. And I have no idea what is going on. So I was like, sir, let me get to the bottom of this. I'll call you back. So I hang up and I was like, who speaks English? Let's start there. So he's like, I do. Like, what is he talking about? There's a shootout, blah, blah, blah. So he goes over to the map. He shows me exactly where it happens. So it's like, how do I get here? Sangin River Valley. How do I get here? You must take a helicopter. Okay, who do I talk to get a helicopter? Them. So the Marines were like, me, Master Sergeant. Day later, I'm in Sangin River Valley on patrol. Getting to the bottom of this, yeah. Sangin River Valley alone was a very ugly place. Being there with Georgians was even worse. Poorly trained and ill-equipped is probably the only way you could explain it. There were some rough times, man. Rough times. Because of where we were located, it was difficult to get supplies. So everything that we got was airdropped. So if airdrop didn't go well, we didn't get stuff. There were days at a time and we didn't have water. Like, we were black on water. We were down Winchester on water. So shaving wasn't a big thing. Shower was a thing. I didn't shower for the first month I was there. And a lot of guys didn't, right? But given the circumstances, man, we were living like Spartans. There was about 12 or 13 of us, because when I got there as an advisor, I believe these guys were with 8th Marines. They had a contingency that was attached to the Georgians. So the Georgian company, this platoon that we were with, had like a squad of Afghan soldiers and a squad of U.S. Marines. And I went out there to kind of see what was going on, because when I got read into the idea that all of their officers were really, or some of the officers, I couldn't say all, weren't very competent. So when I got there, the intelligence officer and the operations officer from the 32nd Georgia Battalion had wanted me to kind of keep an eye on the company commander. And sure enough, man, that guy didn't really do much. He didn't go out on patrol. He was never in any of the briefs. There was a young lieutenant that was the one who was the go-getter in it all. And the company commander just sat back and watched movies all day. So these guys wouldn't go out on patrol. They didn't want to go out on patrol because most of these soldiers were there on conscript. They were forced to join. And the company commander, the fob that we were on was named after the previous company commander that had gotten shot in the neck. So this company commander wanted no part of that. So he was like, well, you guys go on patrol. So he left them to their own devices, and these guys wouldn't do much. So when you're not patrolling and you're not thwarting the attack of the enemy, they're going to come to your door, man. And that's exactly what they were doing. And that's what the guys across the river at 3-5 were having to do. There were times these guys were having shooting matches from the cots they slept in because the Taliban had infiltrated their sleeping space, bro. Like they had dressed as cops, dressed as soldiers, taken uniforms, and infiltrated the FOB and killing Marines where they slept. So that's the kind of stuff that we had to experience, man. So we had gotten some pretty sketchy situations over there because of it. So we had a kid. I say kid because I was a Master Sergeant, and I'm going to say a lot older than I was then. But Staff Sergeant Stacy Green, man. Stacy Green was the one that was in charge of the Marine detachment there. He was in charge of the squad when I had gotten there. And Stacy didn't make it, man. Good kid. Tough kid. And I remember watching the show The Pacific. And I think it was Johnny Baslan who had told some of the other Marines, like, you need to respect the enemy. There were a lot of guys that were just tough guys talking tough talk and how they were going to do this to the Japs. And John Baslan was the one that checked them. And I remember Stacy Green was that way, and he just didn't really respect what we were doing there. And I remember having to have that conversation with Stacy Green. I was like, Stacy, man, you need to respect what these guys are doing, because although you don't necessarily like it, they're good at it, right? And this is one of the things that a lot of people don't know. The difference between Iraq and Afghanistan, man, when you're in shooting matches out there, in Iraq, there were levels. There are levels of hierarchy. There are levels of individuals that are willing to die for the cause and those that are not. There's financiers, there are bomb makers, and then there's all the mid-level and low-level soldiers. There's guys that are specifically responsible for digging holes. There are guys that are specifically responsible for filling holes. There's with explosives, and there's guys responsible for covering the explosives up. There's guys that are willing to die for the cause and get in shooting matches and jump out in front of you and die for the cause. Then there's high-level financiers. There's high-level bomb makers. Those guys are not the ones doing the same thing. There are levels to the game. Plus, they have conventional munitions. They had access to 155 howitzers. They had access to det cord. They had access to automatic munitions. They had access to grenades. They had access to a lot of things that the guys in Afghanistan did not. In Afghanistan, though, when you snatched up a dude in Afghanistan, that dude was the Taliban. In Iraq, they were not necessarily the Mujahideen or Al-Qaeda. You snatch some dude up. It's no different than in organized crime on the streets. You snatch a kid up for an ounce of weed. He's not the guy who's bringing in pounds. He's not bringing in half pounds. He's not bringing in bricks. This guy's just some schlub who's trying to make $1 on a dime. These guys, they were sophisticated. Although they ran around barefoot, they knew how to shoot, move, and communicate. They knew how to get you to move. They knew because they were tested and they were tried against the Russians, and by the way, against us and the CIA, right? Because we trained the Taliban. So the difference is, man, they didn't have conventional munitions. They used plastic jugs full of ammonium nitrate or homemade explosives of some sort, and they got you to move. If you got in a shooting match in the mountains of Afghanistan, you were getting in a shooting match with a pro. Those guys would get you to move, and they'd get you to jump into a trench or a ditch that was wired for sound because it's exactly where they wanted you to go. And when you jump in that ditch, they would detonate it. They'd clack, 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 and away you went. Which is another thing, because everything that they did was not sophisticated. So you would find electric tape and just the different types of devices that we found were not what we had seen in Iraq. They were not sophisticated at all, but they knew how to fight. And there were far fewer of them because they knew the max effective range of our weapon systems. They knew how to get you to move, and they knew how to shoot, move, and communicate. Whereas in Iraq, there were plenty of guys that were willing to die for the cause at the lower levels. These guys were not. So it was much more of a sport over here than it was over here. So it was super scary, man. It was super scary because of the things that they would get you to do. You never knew. They knew our TTPs, man. They knew our tactics and techniques and procedures and how we acted, and they would use them against us. So we were on patrol. It was a routine patrol. It was an administrative patrol. We were just supposed to take something from one of our fobs to a cop. So we were going to take it out to this outpost. And it was literally some simple documentation that had to be signed. So we were just rolling our way up there. And I remember he said, "Hey, Master Sergeant, what time is it?" And I remember looking at my watch, and it was just about to be 2 o'clock. I said, "It's almost 2 o'clock." And he's like, "Oh boy." What's up? He said, "Man, you could set your watch to it. Every time we come up in this neck of the woods at 2 o'clock, man, we're going to get probed." It's like, "Really?" He's like, "You could set your watch to it." I said, "Okay." So didn't think anything of it. We're kind of chatting. It's loud. It's dirty. We're riding, and a couple minutes later, the vehicle comes to a halt. I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" Like, "Hey, vehicle saying up ahead saying they found an IED. They see some." Okay. So we're at a halt. And on our fob, we had Air Force EOD. And they were just not the same as Marine EOD. Air Force EOD is not the same as Marine Corps EOD. They are just not the same guys. So we're going to have to call EOD and come have it check it out. I'm like, "Oh, God, are you serious, man?" So sure enough, we're sitting there waiting. We're waiting. All right, fine, whatever. So time's kind of going by. Guys are doing their searches. Everybody jumps out of vehicles, doing their searches, whatever, come back. And we don't think anything of it. Like, all right, we're just going to have to wait for EOD now. We just keep security out. It's hot outside. I'm not going to sit out there. I just kind of get in the vehicle. So Green and I are chatting it up. I say, "Hey, man, let's take a picture while we're sitting here waiting, doing nothing." So we take a picture, and I still got that picture. I have a selfie. I asked one of the Marines to take a picture of us. And after we take the picture, I'm like, "Hey, man, let's get out. Let's just stretch our legs out while we're waiting for EOD to show up." So we get out of the vehicle. We're walking around. And I don't know why, man. I'm just going to did my lap around the vehicles waiting. We're not doing anything. Nothing's happening. I'm just going to go back in the vehicle. And I remember getting back in the vehicle, sitting down and taking my helmet off. And as soon as I took my helmet off, like within the exact same time, I hear tink, tink. And I thought like the strap, the buckle had hit something metal. And the gunner, the guy in the turret's like, he starts kind of moving around. I'm like, "What the hell's going on?" He's like, "Man, we're getting shot at." And Green was still outside. Well, we had begun to take fire. Green runs around the front of the vehicle to kind of get on this side of the vehicle because we're taking it from the right side. And the second that he comes over here, he steps on a mine. And boom. And again, the very distinct sound. And then there comes a blast. Boom. And I remember feeling like, man, like somebody punched me in my chest. I go up against the side of the vehicle, and it's dirt, and you don't hear anything. It's just like, it's like this bell, and I can't see, I can't hear. It's super dusty. And the driver just puts the vehicle in reverse and starts pushing out, because every time that you're kind of in a line, you're always assuming that you're in some kind of kill zone, right? That's what we've kind of conditioned ourselves to believe. So he like hits the vehicle in reverse, and as he pulls out of reverse, the dust cloud begins to kind of settle, and we see where we had just come from. And I see Stacy Green's body just laying there, man. And the thing about it is these guys stopped firing. They got somebody to move. The detonation happens, and then it's complete silence. They don't follow up. They didn't run up on us because there was distance, man. So they just now they're waiting for something to happen. How are we going to react? How are we going to respond to this? So I remember looking at I remember looking at Green, and I could see that his mouth was wide open. You know, his eyes were open. And the captain that was in the vehicle with us is like, hey, what are you going to do? What should we do? I said, well, I go get him, sir. Can't leave my man out there. You know, got to get him. So he's like, okay, well, let's figure something out. So the captain, a young captain, wants to sit down and devise a plan, I guess, you know? And right about that time, I hear, psh, psh, and they're shooting his body now. So his torso's just laying there. He's got no legs. He's got no arms. His mouth's open. His eyes are open. And you could see dust kicking up. Like they're shooting right along the side of a man, and you see dirt. Psh, and they're shooting his body. So I said, I got to go get him, sir. I got to go. And so he's like, no, Master, you can't just go out there. I said, no, I'm going to go out there. I said, here's what's going to happen. So I tell the gunner, I say, hey, look, man, take a look. See if you could see any muzzle flashes. And when I jump out, I need you to just start shooting at whatever muzzle flashes you see. I'm going to go grab them, and I'm bringing them into the vehicle. And so he's like, roger that, Master, you got it. So I tell the captain what I'm going to do. He just kind of shrugged his shoulders like, okay, let's get it. So I have a Georgian soldier there with me, and I'm like, look, man, here's what I need you to do. We're both going to jump out. I need you to stay behind me. I'm jumping out the back of this MRAP. I need you to shoot from the back of the MRAP while he's suppressing. I need you guys to kind of talk, and I need another set of eyes. He's like, I'm not getting out. I said, no, you're going to get out. I need you to get out. And he refused. So I was like, okay. I took his rifle. I gave it to the captain. I said, he doesn't get this thing back. You sit here. I jumped out of the vehicle. I told the driver, follow, like go along. So I'm going alongside the MRAP, and I hear, psh, psh, they're shooting. And I'm like hunkered down behind the MRAP, making our way closer to his body. And this Lance Corporal, who was in the other vehicle, sees me. And I put this kid in for a NAM with a V. He sees me and just comes running at me, man. And I remember the kid takes off running. He like slides on his knees right up alongside me. And I had it's like a stretcher, but it's kind of a rollout stretcher, right? So we take him, put him on the stretcher, and I remember like he had a bone sticking out of his shoulder, man. His cami belt was still on. It's just everything was just, and I could smell the burnt flesh, man. And I remember just like closing his mouth and closing his eyes, and a litter is what it's called. It was a litter. So we got this litter, put him on the litter. And I'll tell you, man, I remember trying to get the litter under his torso. And so I lifted one side, I put the litter underneath, and it put his body down. And then I remember like lifting his body like into my lap as we put the litter on the other side. And I'll tell you, man, I remember not praying like so hard on my life. Like, man, if this is it, it's time, you know, like I remember just being terrified, dude, like absolutely like scared out of my mind that there was another mine, you know? But I also, in my mind, your mind just starts thinking so many things so fast. And I remember thinking like, this guy needs the honors, man. His face is dirty. He's got dirt on his tongue. You know, like the honorable and noble thing to do is get this dude off the ground. And so these animals and these monsters can't just continue to pepper his body with lead, you know? So we pick him up, put him in, and put him on the floor of the MRAP. And I just remember sitting there, man, like thinking like this kid, I was just with him 2 minutes ago. 2 minutes ago, he and I just took a picture together. And now he's gone, you know? And I was just saturated in his blood, man. Blood all over my boots, my uniform. And I never got a chance to find his family. Never got a chance to let them know that, you know, their son, nephew, he wasn't married, but like to let them know, man, that kid was a hero, man. Like that kid was fearless, bro. He was absolutely fearless. And it was a shame to see him go, you know? And he was a leader too, man. I remember like that week, some of the Marines, one of the kids had got like a Dear John letter. One of the kids had gotten like a friggin' collection letter from his truck. And Green was there, man. You know, he was what young platoon sergeants do, what young staff sergeants do. And he was like getting his men together and kept them focused on what we were there for. And then just a few days later, he ends up getting killed, man. I think one of the other things that had happened that was pretty interesting is that there was a captain there who, and this is kind of like it's kind of a strange story, but this captain was there, and we were on a patrol, and we got rerouted. The route got deviated because of an incident that we had gotten into, and I ended up going to this patrol base where he was, and he was new. He was the one that was in charge of the Anglico platoon that was there. So I show up, I walk into this their COC. It was a small little COC. It was just a small GP tent. And I walk in and I notice that he's got a Bible and a notebook on his thing. And as soon as I walk in, he like closes it up and puts it away. And so I said, "Hey, sir, how you doing? Master Estrada, I was out on patrol. You know, can you do me a favor and kind of walk me through what you had seen?" And so he's kind of telling me what he saw, and I was just going to get an understanding of the overall landscape of what we had just experienced and where bad guys were and all of that stuff. So I end up taking off. I was there a short period of time, and the Marines were like, "Hey, Master, we're taking off. Let's go." So I was literally there 3-4 minutes tops. And as I get ready to take off, I say, "Skipper, I just want to let you know that I kind of get my power source from where you got yours, man. And don't find any shame. There's no need to be ashamed of what you were reading, you know, like find comfort in that. I find the same source of power." So I walked off, and I left it alone. Left. A couple months later, I'm down in Delaram, and I see that same captain. And come to find out, he had a hard time on that deployment. There were some guys that had gotten hurt, and I don't know that he needed a break or somebody felt that he needed a break, but I remember him seeing me, and he called me over. So I was like, "Hey, what's going on, sir?" He said, "Hey, do you mind if I call you by your first name?" I was like, that was unusual. You know, I was like, "Sure." So we started talking, and he said, "Hey, man, I want to talk to you about, I obviously haven't seen you since that night. It's the only time I had ever met you or seen you." He's like, "But I wanted to tell you something." And I said, "What's up?" He says, "You know, minutes before you walked in and all of this stuff happened," he's like, I was raised in a Bible believing, God fearing church home, and he said, I really felt that like God abandoned me in this situation because of all the just carnage and the ugliness that I've been around, the darkness." He said, "And I remember just minutes before this all kicked off, I was behind a tent screaming into my hands, crying out to God, saying like, if you're real, show me. Show me you're real." He said, "Minutes later, you walk in and you tell me that." Yeah, so I'd like to go back. So my experience leaving recruiting duty and checking into what I thought I wanted at 1st Battalion, 6th Marines, right? So I have these aspirations of going back to a battalion and becoming a platoon sergeant. I got all these exciting, you know, emotions going through me. And I'm like, I've got all these expectations in my head of what it's going to look like. And it looked nothing like it. So I show up in Alphas. I'm coming from recruiting duty. I had a successful tour. Everybody loved me there. I'm thinking everybody's going to love me here. And I remember checking in. I'm in my Alphas, and the Sergeant Major had, you know, it's kind of ceremonial. He puts his forge on you, and you're walking around in your forge, your French forge, and you're checking in. I got my stupid little check-in sheet, and I go check into the operations chief, his Master Guns. And I handed it over. "Hey, Master Guns, how you doing?" Now, keep in mind, on recruiting duty, you have a very close proximity to a Master Gunnery Sergeant as your recruiter instructor. So for a staff sergeant to be like, "Hey, Master Guns, what's up?" It's not offensive. So I check in. "Hey, Master Guns, how you doing?" "Here, checking in." Staff Sergeant Estrada reporting in. And he's laid back in his chair, and he's got his feet on the desk, and he just stares at me. Doesn't say a word to me. He's just staring at me. So I was like, thinking in my mind, this is awkward. He sits up, he grabs my check-in sheet off the desk, crumbles it, and throws it at me. Doesn't say a word. So I pick it up. To one of these things. Now in my mind, I'm like, okay, what did I do wrong? So I slide it back over. Like, good afternoon, Master Gunnery Sergeant, Staff Sergeant Estrada, checking in. His feet are back on the desk now. Sits back up, crumbles it again, and throws it at me. All right, what did I do? I'm thinking in my mind, like, what did I do wrong now? Okay, well, let me pick it up. I lock my body. I'm in the position of attention. Don't look at him. I'm looking forward. Good afternoon, Master Gunnery Sergeant. Staff Sergeant Estrada reporting for orders, for duty. Feet back on the desk now. A third time. He sits up, crumbles the paper, stands up, throws it at my face now. Not just like throwing at me, but like threw it at me, hits me in the face. He says, Staff Sergeant, you got a bad attitude. So this is my introduction. Sorry. I did everything I could possibly do. I uncrumbled the paper, smoothed it out of the desk. I say, Master Guns, I asked to come here. I came from recruiting duty. Like, I could do this all day. So he says, get the F out of here. Like, he starts cussing me out. Takes my checkout sheet or check-in sheet and rips it in half. Crumbles and throws it at me again. Kicks me out of the office. Crumble it up. I go to the S1, tape it up, and continue to check in. I just left. Fast forward, this same Master Guns, for whatever reason, has got it out for me. He's got a bad attitude. We deploy, we go on UDP, we're in Okinawa. Now, they gave a safety brief. They gave a liberty attire brief. 1st Battalion, 6th Marines, anywhere you went on the camp, on Camp Hansen, or at Camp Schwab, you were required to wear a collared shirt. If you're going to the gym, you wear a collared shirt. If you go to the chow hall, you wear a collared shirt. If you go to the beach, you wear a collared shirt to the beach, and then you take your collared shirt off, you go to the beach, and then you come back in your collared shirt. At no time was any Marine from 1st Battalion, 6th Marines allowed to not wear a collared shirt. So we're in the theater, and they're giving literally visuals. The battalion commander, the battalion sergeant major, and the Master Gunnery Sergeant, the ops chief, the battalion ops chief, are saying, hey, is this Marine? They pulled Marines up, and they had guys stage their hats backwards and shirts hanging out. Like, is this Marine in proper civilian attire? Like, no, Master Guns. All right, what about this one? Now, this Marine comes up. He's got a football jersey tucked in, belt, shirt under the jersey. So he's like, is this Marine in appropriate civilian attire? Like, literally, next Marine. He's got all these Marines lined up, right? Like a visual, because we're recording out about a bunch of crayon eaters and we need visuals, right? Puppets and crayons is how Marines communicate. So this guy in proper civilian attire, and everybody's like, no, Master Gunnery Sergeant. He's like, he is. This is proper civilian attire. So right then I look over and one of my Marines is sleeping. So I go snatch dude up, correct him. Well, apparently after that, there was a caveat. It was like, yes, this is correct, but we at 1-6 won't dress like this. So I didn't catch that part. So we're at Chow one day. I walk in. I happen to be wearing a football jersey. I had a T-shirt underneath it. It's tucked in and I have a belt on. I'm in the Chow hall. I walk in. I go into the staff NCO dining area and the Master Gun sees me. Who doesn't like me? Hey, Staff Sergeant, you in appropriate civilian attire? And I was like, well, yes, I am, Master Gunnery Sergeant. He's like, no, you're not. Master Guns, I've got a T-shirt on underneath my jersey. Jersey's tucked in. I'm wearing a belt. Staff Sergeant, you got a bad attitude. And he starts laying into me. I'm sick and tired of your punk attitude. He starts yelling at me like I did something wrong. I said, Master Guns, if you want, I'll just go change. Is that easy? Oh, you're just going to gaff me off now. So everything I did just kind of excited him even more. I said, look, Master Guns, you don't have to talk to me like that. I'll leave. I'll take it. And then the Sergeant Major, he was cool with me. He liked me. He said, hey, Estrada, just sit down. Just don't worry about it. Just sit down. So I sit down. I'm about to eat. And Master Guns said, hey, Staff Sergeant, I said you're an inappropriate civilian attire. So I'm like, now we're going to play this game. So I get up. I say, I'm just going to go change. Sergeant Major's like, Estrada, sit down. Now they're playing this game with me. So the Master Guns gets up, walks around the table, and starts closing distance on me. So I'm like, hey, look, Master Guns, I'm telling you right now, don't talk to me like that. I said, I'll go change, knock it off. So Sergeant Major gets up and starts holding the Master Guns back. He's like, you're not but a little loudmouth punk staff sergeant. So he tells me. And you got a bad attitude. And then starts talking about my generation. And like, so I'm like, you know what, Master Guns, I'm leaving. I'm done with this. So some first sergeant from some other battalion decides he wants to pop off at the mouth and correct me too. So I'm like, hey, I don't know who you think you are for some. You need to shut your mouth too. Everybody shut their mouth. I got nothing to say. So the Master Gun's like, who do you think you're? I said, you know what, Master Guns? I'll tell you right now. I will take you and beat you like a dog in the street. Let's go outside right now in the parking lot. Let's go. I'm done with you. I said, come on. So I went over and I went to grab him by his wrist. Like, let's go outside because we're done with this whole Marine stuff, bro. We're gonna act like men. You want to talk to me like that? Like I'm just gonna punk. We're gonna deal with it like men. So now this other first sergeant and Gunny and whoever these guys from another command want to stand up. I'm like, no, you idiots, sit down too. No, this is between me and him. Let's go. Come on, tough guy, let's go. So I open the door. I'm like, let's go. Come on. You're not but another little punk staff sergeant. You're lucky. This sergeant major said, hey, just sit down. I was like, are you freaking kidding me, man? So we get everybody in an uproar in the staff NCO dining area because I was in a football jersey that was tucked in and it wasn't appropriate enough. I had to wear a collared shirt. So this old man's going to get beat up because I was violating. And I could have just walked away and went and put on a stupid polo shirt. But no.
What was this vendetta against?
I have no idea. I never found out. I never found out why this guy had such an issue with me.
Wow.
Yeah. So fortunately, I had a pretty good experience when I was getting ready to get out. A guy that I had met while I was on recruiting duty, who's still a very good friend and mentor now to me, is he was with the Chicago Police Department. When I was on recruiting duty, I had met him. We kept a friendship, and every time I'd come home on leave, we'd grab coffee or just kind of hang out or whatever. And we had kept in contact. So all the time that I was in after I had left recruiting duty, we'd stayed in contact. So I'm getting ready I'm at a decision point because I was in the zone for Master Gunnery Sergeant. And I was like, okay, do I stay in, look to get promoted, and probably go back on deployment for a couple of times, go back to an infantry battalion as an operations chief, as a Master Guns, or do I just look to get out? Well, right around that same time, this guy happens to text me. And he says, this friend of mine who I've got this relationship with, he says, hey man, when are you getting out of the Marine Corps? I said, well, I can get out in June of 2012. And he says, well, I need you to get out sooner than that. How soon can you get out? I said, well, if I take terminal, I could be out in March. He said, well, I need you to get out in March. So, okay, I'll give you a call in about, 5 minutes. I've got a job for you. Okay. So this is just out of the blue. I'm literally at this decision point in my life. This is September of 2011. And a few minutes later, he calls me up to say, look, man, check it out. I'm not with Chicago Police anymore. I'm with the County's Homeland Security. I need you to come and work for me. He says, you can get out in March? I say, yeah, I can get out. He says, all right, I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars. We got a job for you. Just get out. I'm like, okay. So I was like, cool. I guess my decision's made for me. I get off the phone. I call my wife. Babe, I'm getting out. You remember my buddy so-and-so? And she's like, yeah. I say, hey, he just offered me a job. I got to get out in March. So I'm getting out of here. So she's like, that's it? Is there anything in writing? I'm like, no, my buddy said it, so it's going to happen. Like, that's just the way it is. So, okay. So I hang up the phone. And the next day I put in my retirement papers, and it happened to be that the day that they were appealed. Don't ask, don't tell. So I could say that I dropped my retirement papers on that day in 2011. So I retired in 2012, March. We left. But the job wasn't quite ready, so I ended up working for the Department of State as an independent contractor out of Moyoc for the old company that was once called Blackwater. And I worked there as a contractor for them. We did some work for the country of Kenya, did a gig with them, and then went back home and began working for Cook County's Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, where I was the chief of logistics.
Right.
Yeah, I did that for a couple of years, man, and went to school. because of this same guy. He forced me to go to school. I didn't get on the job until August of 2012. I got out in March 2012, got on a job in August. And by January 2013, I started going to school full time. Went to school full time for 3 years, man. I was going to school full time, working full time, trying to be a dad, trying to be a coach, trying to be, everything, trying to be present. And went to school full time for 3 years, worked full time at the same time. And the first 9 months of it, I was actually in a part-time police academy every other Saturday. So going to school 4 nights a week from 6 p to 9 p, working from, 8 to 5. So going from work to school 4 nights a week, and then every other Saturday in the police academy. So a lot of studying, not a whole lot of sleep. So once that academy was done, I was sworn in and I had a part-time badge at a police department, but I was still working full-time at Homeland Security. So did that for 3 years. As soon as I graduated, went right into grad school. Went to University of Illinois and got my MBA. So I went to school for 2 more years, man. So the first 5 years of me being out, working full-time, going to school full-time, and just not doing a whole lot of sleep, man. Yeah, one of the things when I got to Homeland Security, which was the first real job that I got to, because when I worked for the Department of State, everybody there was either, they had been in the contract world. My team leader was a Navy SEAL, so it was very paramilitary. When I got to Homeland Security and got my first real job, my boss at the time, who was still a friend and mentor of mine, was a Marine. The executive director had gone through OCS and declined a commission, but we had some other guys that were military guys, right? So they were all either police or fire. So they had the same type of culture that they had been raised by, similar to that of the military. So we all got along very well. And I didn't feel that separation until I left there. So I left there after I left the county. I ended up finishing grad school, and then I felt like, hey, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to make this move into corporate America, right? Like I served my country, and now I get my education, and I'm going to go to corporate America and do great things. And that's where I really began to kind of struggle, because Chicago politics are something fierce, man. And they weren't working in my favor. And when I left the county, it wasn't on my terms. So there was a political shift and some things had happened. And there were a couple of people in key leadership responsibilities that ended up leaving the department, and I was one of them. My boss, the executive director, ended up leaving as well. And we all left. And because of a political shift in the landscape in Chicago politics. So we all leave. And at that point, I'm now trying to feel like, okay, hey, look, I'm a decorated combat veteran, man. I've got an MBA from a prestigious institution, from a Big Ten college. There's no reason why I couldn't find a job. And I went to the VA to try and find the help, with some kind of job finding resources, and it just wasn't coming to bear, man. Here I am with this MBA and all this experience, and I stopped counting at 300 jobs that I applied for. I went on job interviews, and nobody gave a crap about my combat Vs. Nobody gave a crap about how many deployments or lives you saved or how many shooting matches you got. And nobody gave a crap about what you did on recruiting duty and the impact you made in your community. Nobody gave a crap about boot camp or high PFT, anything. They didn't care. Nobody cared. They wanted certificates. They wanted education. I'm like, okay, cool. I've got that, right? Like I pursued this education for a reason. I thought if I pursue this MBA that they're going to maybe understand, like, hey, look, I know operations. I can talk long-term strategic planning with anybody, man. I wanted to be able to provide a lens to an employer that I'm better than just breaking things and blowing things up, right? And shooting things from long distance. I can talk long-term strategic planning. I can talk operations. I could do those things, man. I can belly up against any boardroom table and discuss topics that way. But they didn't care because I didn't grow up in a specific space, like by virtue of what I was making, the responsibility that I had, the budgets that I managed, the number of people that I had, the buildings and structures and places that I had managed, they didn't matter to them, because to them it was like, well, yeah, technically, because of the amount of money you made, the budget you had, the people and personnel and resources that you managed, you should be like a director level, but you didn't grow up. Nobody's going to hire you as a director of HR. Nobody's going to hire you as a director of sales. Nobody's going to hire you as a director of operations if you didn't grow up in that space. If you didn't grow up in manufacturing, if you weren't a manager, or assistant manager, or a director, deputy director, they're not going to hire you. So I was in this conundrum because I had done all these cool things, but because it wasn't in corporate America or in the private sector, they weren't going to hire me at that level. So it's fine. Okay, cool. I'll take a haircut to get in, and I'll be an individual contributor, and I'll take a lower pay job to get into the company. They're like, well, no, because what's going to happen is you'll find a job that's better off, and then you'll leave us. You'll be a flight risk. So I was in this, bro, so I couldn't find a job, man. Like, you want to talk about fighting some demons, because it's like, man, I drank this Kool-Aid for 20 years, man. And, you know, hey, look, go do great things. And we're going to win wars and win battles and make men and make Marines and do all this stuff. And I bought into the hype, and I gave at the detriment of my own marriage, man, right? At the detriment of my own health and safety. I was willing to do it. And then just to come back and just get kicked in the nuts, man, like by the company, you know, by corporate America, like, yeah, that was great. And you did it, but we don't care, right? And it's like, okay, well, but I went to college, and I not only that, I went to grad school, and doesn't that mean something? Like, kinda, it does, but no, it doesn't. So, man, I struggled to find a job, and I stopped counting at 300 applications, man. I stopped counting at 300, and it was tough. It was tough. I finally landed at a spot, and the only reason I got in was because the guy was a former CIA agent and enjoyed my story, liked my story, and he got it, right? Like, he got it. So I worked there for a while, and then I started my kind of reading, you know, how things work. And even now, man, I'm starting trying to find a job now, right? Like, I went back to contracting. My daughter was in high school. She's in her junior year of high school, and things didn't work out with the company I was at. So I stepped away from there and said, look, man, if I go back to contracting, I can be closer to my girl, you know, be closer to my daughter, and be able to kind of hang out with her. And she started wrestling. Girls wrestling is the biggest sport, the biggest growing sport in America right now. So I was like, man, I could coach, I could do contracting work, be close to her. I started substitute teaching. And I've been doing that for a couple of years now, man. But it's like, all right, because of the season of my life and where I'm at in my life, my kids are grown now, man. My youngest is out of high school already. And so, like, I started going back to full-time work, and it's tough because of my background, man. I feel almost like it's tainted me, man. Like, I pigeonholed myself into just being a gunslinger, and it wasn't on purpose, just by virtue of what my experience yields. Nobody, again, in manufacturing and healthcare, they don't give a crap about what you did, man. If you didn't grow up in that space, bro, they don't want anything to do with you. You know, and in a world of AI, man, that's who's reading a resume anyways. You know what I mean? So you got to go through multiple screening, and it's easier for them to go, okay, well, this guy was with this company, this company, this company. I know them, and I know what he did in this role. Yeah, this all kind of says very similar stuff, but 20 years in the Marine Corps, he doesn't know anything about this. So people just aren't educated, man. And it's like, there are too few of us for them to be able to have, like, my probability and the chances of me coming across somebody who recognizes what an 0369 Master Sergeant does as an infantry unit leader, like, they're not going to be able to appreciate and recognize and understand what that meant. So I continue this uphill battle, man. And it's tough. It sucks. And I will tell you, I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that there were times where I resented it. Like, man, I don't regret any of this, man. What I did for the organization, I don't regret it one bit, man. I loved what I did. I miss it every day, man. I remember being in the Marine Corps, people would say, oh, I can't wait to get to the real world. Like, this is not the real world. That's the real world. That should be what the real world is. That should be defined as the real world, because everybody's going in the same direction, man. Everybody's swimming the same way. Everybody's got focused on goals, man, and accomplishing things and doing better for themselves and others, and developing and shaping people. Out there, man, it's cutthroat. And I've been out for 14 years, man. So I get the language. I know the language. I know the landscape. I know the enemy. But I've spent too much time on the other side, man. So it's a far more difficult challenge to kind of penetrate to the level at which I feel that I would like to be at. I'll never say I deserve anything, man. I've worked hard for what I got, but you know, I because of the humility that I walk in, I always feel like I don't deserve it necessarily, and maybe that's part of the problem, right? Like I still struggle, man, for an imposter syndrome, man. Like I've been around a lot of cool things, and there's times where like, man, am I in the right spot? I was an executive MBA program, right? And dude, there was a surgeon, attorneys. I've got a sleeve tattoo, and you know, like I don't look like everybody else. I don't talk like everybody else, and my life experiences ain't what theirs were, right? You got guys that like, oh yeah, this is my second. I had a guy who was a professor at Northwestern University, bro. This guy's got a PhD. This guy's got an MD. This guy's got a JD, right? I'm going to school with these people, and I'm feeling like I'm only here because of the demographic, right? Like not just what I look like on the outside, but because of what I've accomplished. Because this program, it's an executive MBA program, but they wanted people from banking, you know, so from finance, from insurance, from manufacturing, so all these different people. So I checked a couple of different boxes for people, you know, and I felt that way a lot. Man. Like I didn't necessarily belong there, you know. I don't know that I do anything different. I feel that I did the right stuff. I really do. And I think that, you know, I am where I'm supposed to be. I really truly feel that I've got a higher calling in life, man. And our story is written before we were born, you know? So I just do what I can and allow my God to do what I can't. You know what I mean? So I'll just continue to push, man. I love the story that I come from. I appreciate who I am, where I come from, what I was made of, and how and why. And I don't want to do anything. I don't regret anything, and I'm not gonna do anything different. I wouldn't have done anything different, man. I think definitely, man. I don't know how you would plug this in, man, but I tell you, my wife. There's only one way to describe her. I would say, I don't want to say it. She's an effing gangster, bro. Like that's the only way to describe her, man. She was there day one. I stepped off to recruit training, and she's there with me. So all through combat deployments, through other deployments. I was in Ukraine twice. In Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. I landed like day 7 after Hurricane Maria. Costa Rica training police departments, in El Salvador training police. That place was nuts. That place was absolutely crazy, bananas. And she was through it all. I mean, she took it, man. My wife turned 18, graduated high school, got married all in the same week. Yeah.
How long you was married?
33 years, bro.
Wow.
June will be 34 years we've been married in a row to each other.
Congratulations.
Yeah. It's been a rough ride, man, but we're still hooking and jabbing, dude.
It's been a pleasure sitting with you, brother.
Thank you, man. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. I thank you for the privilege of being able to tell my story, man. I hope that somebody, you know, at the risk of sounding corny and cliche, man, I hope somebody, you know, can get something from this. I really do. You know, whether it's healing or you know, Stacey Graydon's family. That'd be great, man. I'd love nothing more than to be able to just kind of tell them a little bit about what I knew about the short time that I spent with their son.